Chapter 3209. No matter how bad the business was, Shu Bai would not close the restaurant. As long as the business was balanced, even if it was not profitable, Shu Bai would not close it. This was because the restaurant was where Shu Bai settled down. Without the restaurant, Shu Bai would have nowhere to go. She would not be able to do missions or become stronger. If she did not find something for herself to do, she would be an idle soul. That kind of emptiness would drive her crazy. Furthermore, when he saw other people doing business, and those who were strong were busy becoming strong, while he was useless, the sense of loss he felt was enough to drive him crazy. Ning Shu said, "It's good that you can solve it. If there's anything, let me know. After all, I took your money." Shu Bai nodded. "I know. If there's anything I can't solve, I'll let you know." Shu Bai would not tell Ning Shu about small matters. Good steel should be used on the edge of a blade. If she troubled him with small matters, she would waste his favor. Mei Ziqing gave Xiaohua a plate of delicious desserts. Xiaohua finished all the dishes on the table. He was a little shy. "Maybe I won't be able to eat such delicious food in the future." Ning Shu said, "Don't say that. You're someone who will live for a long time." As long as he did not die, age was not an issue. He could eat a lot of delicious food. After eating, the two of them were speechless again. Ning Shu did not have many opportunities to be alone with Xiaohua. Usually, when they met, Mei Ziqing was there to buffer them. The atmosphere between the two of them was awkward and stiff. After all, they were not familiar with each other. They only knew each other because they knew Mei Ziqing. Xiaohua relied on Mei Ziqing. He did not rely on her and did not talk much. Xiaohua smiled at Ning Shu and said, "I'm leaving." Ning Shu nodded. "How are you leaving? Can you leave by yourself, or do you need me to send you?" This was a nomological space. Outside the city was violent nomological power. Even Xiaohua could not withstand such nomological power. Xiaohua did not try to show off. "I'll have to trouble you to send me. I can't leave this place." Ning Shu nodded and brought Xiaohua out of the nomological space. When they were in the void, he looked at the countless planes and asked, "Where are you going?" Xiaohua looked at the vast and boundless world, and his eyes were filled with amazement. The world was really too spectacular. Previously, it was Pan Chen who had brought him through various worlds. However, because he was on this mountain, he didn't have the chance to see all of these worlds. Now that he looked at it, he felt that it was too magnificent and shocking. Xiaohua randomly pointed at a world. As for what world it was all up to fate. Ning Shu instructed Xiaohua, "When you're in this world, try to restrain yourself. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Also, look at your hair. If you're in a free country, that's fine. If you're not, you can dye it. Try not to use your abilities as much as possible. It will cause problems in the world. However, if someone comes to provoke you, don't be afraid. One word, fight." Becoming strong was so that one would not be bullied. If one was still bullied like when one was weak, then there was no doubt that one was a strong general. Xiaohua nodded. "I got it." He thought for a moment and passed the 2 stones to Ning Shu. "You left these with me, but they haven't changed at all." "I'm sorry." Ning Shu took the stones. "This has nothing to do with you. You don't have to be sorry. Go ahead. If there's anything, remember to inform me." Xiaohua walked into the space passage and entered the world. Ning Shu watched Xiaohua disappear. It could be considered that he had found a place for Xiaohua. Xiaohua's identity wasn't suitable to stay in a place full of mission enforcers. Especially since he was the origin of the world. What did mission enforcers lack the most? A world. What was needed to build a world? The origin of the world. Xiaohua was purely a walking piece of gold. If he didn't catch him, he would be letting himself down. After sending Xiao Hua away, Ning Shu returned to Water City and went to the restaurant next to Shubai's restaurant. Speaking of the incarnation of the sorcerer's law, Ning Shu thought of Zhang Jiasen. He opened a restaurant here purely to disgust her. When Zhang Jiasen was alive, he was a man with a phoenix. He could firmly grasp the opportunity to become stronger. He didn't even hesitate to hurt others. Ning Shu walked into the restaurant and scanned it. The restaurant's decorations were quite luxurious, and there were quite a few customers. Mission enforcers didn't eat to fill their stomachs or to obtain energy from 15. Instead, they chased after taste and ate delicious food. If the food in the restaurant tasted good, it would naturally keep the customers. Damn, this guy is quite rich. He even opened a restaurant now. Is he really rich? The waiter welcomed Ning Shu into the hall. Ning Shu sat down, ordered a pot of tea, and said, "I want to see your boss." The waiter glanced at Ning Shu, thought for a moment, and said, "Our boss isn't here." Ning Shu said, "She said an acquaintance is looking for her." She said, "My name is Ning Shu." Hearing this name, Zhang Jiasen would definitely come. Wasn't he opening such a restaurant to disgust her? Of course, it couldn't be ruled out that Zhang Jiasen was trying to make money. While making money, he was also trying to disgust her. When Ning Shu thought of Zhang Jiasen traversing through Water City, he was very unhappy. Although anyone could enter Water City, Zhang Jiasen's behavior still made Ning Shu feel that his territory was being invaded. This uncomfortable feeling couldn't be dispelled. The waiter went downstairs suspiciously. Obviously, he was going to inform Zhang Jiasen. After a while, Zhang Jiasen came downstairs. When he saw Ning Shu, he said to the waiter, "Give me a portion of all the restaurant's signature dishes." Okay. Zhang Jiasen sat opposite Ning Shu and poured a cup of tea for Ning Shu. "Are you looking for me? It seems like this is your first time looking for me. Why are you looking for me?" Ning Shu felt the acid in her stomach churning non-stop. It was nauseating. "You should know why you opened a restaurant here. You want to disgust me." Zhang Jiasen smiled. "Ning Shu, are you suffering from paranoia? I opened a restaurant to make money. What does it have to do with you? You don't think I opened a restaurant in Water City for you, do you? You're thinking too much." Ning Shu looked at him indifferently. "Did I say that? Then why are you looking for me? You look like you're looking for trouble. If others can open a restaurant here, why can't I? Moreover, I'm not giving you any less taxes." Zhang Jiasen said and knocked his head. "Look at my memory. I forgot that you can't collect taxes. Then I can only give my taxes to the organization." Ning Shu's expression was indifferent. Is it fun to disgust me? Opening a restaurant in his own city didn't require him to pay taxes. It was his own world. He paid a part of the taxes to the organization, and the rest was his. Of course. It's not fun. I never thought of disgust you. It's just that your hostility towards me is inexplicable. You've always done all kinds of things to me. He had been looking for an opportunity to rekindle their old relationship/BK. Chapter 32:11. This was interesting. Ning Shu played with the whip in her hand vigorously, and the sound of the whip was loud and clear. "Can't I take it out to play with? I didn't say I was going to use this whip to hit people. I just took it out to warm up." The judge was probably rendered speechless by Ning Shu's unreasonable behavior. Take it out to play with? Even a 3-year-old child wouldn't believe it. The judge wouldn't talk nonsense with Ning Shu. As the city lord of a lost city, how do you explain abusing your power? Ning Shu, there's nothing to explain. I'm just chasing away the troublemakers. Let's put the blame on each other. It was especially nice to look green. As the city lord, I have an obligation to maintain the stability of the city and give all the mission enforcers an environment to comprehend the law in peace. I have an unshirkable responsibility. Ning Shu was righteous. I'm proud to hold my head high. And Ning Shu found that the judge kept staring at her whip. A thought came to Ning Shu's mind, and that was that the judge was after the god-beating whip. If that was the case, then this matter was very interesting. Today's matter was obviously set up by someone else. Then this judge could also be a member of a faction. Even if she wasn't, she should be inextricably linked. She should be a fair judge. If she was a member of a faction, then this judge had lost the fairness of a judge. Ning Shu deliberately swung the whip. My whip looks good, right? There were already 2 people who came for the whip. This thing must be something good, so she had to keep it well. The more they asked her for it, the more she refused to give it. With so many people fighting over it, it must be something good. Ning Shu glanced at Zhang Jiasen. Did Zhang Jiasen also join this faction, or did someone else find him? Thinking about the cause and effect, Ning Shu felt more and more that someone was behind this. And it was a situation that targeted her. Sure enough, the people of these factions also killed without spilling blood. Greed drove others to target her, and now this faction even used the judge. Ning Shu felt that this organization was quite interesting. There were many factions, but the organization would not care about these factions. As long as the general direction was right and they did not threaten the organization's ship, they would set some rules and the people on the ship would fight to the death. Moreover, when these people gathered together, the organization did not seem to care too much. However, once the organization was threatened, it would definitely incur the wrath of the organization. This organization was neither free nor free. The judge looked away from the whip and said to Ning Shu coldly, "Don't talk nonsense. I know what happened, and I left evidence." Ning Shu asked politely, "What evidence?" "I didn't hurt anyone, because I took out my whip. Can't I take out my whip and dance?" And the organization didn't say that you can't enter a restaurant with a whip. Even if she wanted to pin a crime on Zhang Jiasen, she would have to wait until she beat him half to death and cripple him before there would be any evidence, all right? The judge said, "I'm going to hand over the ins and outs of this matter to the organization. Whether you're right or wrong, the organization will judge and then punish you." Ning Shu tilted her head and asked politely, "I don't want the organization to know about this. Is there any way to make up for it? Put away your whip. You're going to attack people like this. Now, I'm going to confiscate your whip. When the organization's judgment comes out, the whip will be returned to you." She confiscated the tools. Ning Shu was speechless. She sighed. Everyone's table manners are so ugly. If you want my whip, just say it. Why are you wasting so much effort? Aren't you tired of going around in circles? They wanted to play dirty with her. When their strength was equal, they would go around in circles like this. When their strength was not equal, there was no need to go through so much trouble. She could just crush them. Should she be grateful that these people thought highly of her? The judge heard Ning Shu's mockery and did not even change her expression. She was like an emotionless killer. The judge stretched out her hand and said, "Give me the whip." Ning Shu shook her head. "No, this is mine." The judge said, "I'm confiscating your tools." Ning Shu said, "No, this is my dance prop. Learn more about whip dancing." The judge was too lazy to argue with Ning Shu. He was not a talkative person. However, the other party just kept firing like a machine gun. He directly reported this matter to the organization, including what Ning Shu said to Zhang Jiasen. These words were enough to prove that Ning Shu had the tendency to cause trouble. Now that he wanted to confiscate her weapon, the other party refused to cooperate. Ning Shu snorted. "Do you mean that I hit Zhang Jiasen? You have that tendency." Ning Shu's expression turned serious. She swung the whip at Zhang Jiasen's face. If I don't do something, I won't be able to live up to the accusation you gave me. I can't bear this accusation for nothing. Ning Shu knew that the organization would deal with it. They would definitely punish her and let her handle the star stones for free. The number of free star stones she received before and after was simply astonishing. When you have too many debts, you don't have to worry about it anymore. Taking this opportunity to get rid of Zhang Jiasen, it wouldn't be for nothing. Zhang Jiasen clearly didn't expect that Ning Shu would still dare to make a move at this time in front of the judge. The whip arrived in front of him at a very fast speed, bringing with it a cold wind. The coldness and murderous intent were like needles stabbing into his soul, causing it to tremble. Impudent. The judge, who had been as cold as ice, was furious. Ning Shu's actions were challenging the judge's authority. The judge blocked the whip for Zhang Jiasen and stood in front of Zhang Jiasen. He looked at Ning Shu with a very serious expression. Making a move in a city of laws is an additional crime. I will report this matter truthfully to the organization. The judge was probably angered by Ning Shu, and his tone was very cold. Ning Shu held the whip and looked at the judge. Judge, you're the judge of that area. Since you're a judge, you must have a fair attitude. If the organization finds out that you're abusing your power for personal gain, using the judge's name to benefit the faction, do you think you can continue as a judge? The judge's job was not easy. Doing it would offend both sides, and it was detestable. If the judge was no longer a judge one day, the people he had offended in the past would definitely not let him off easily. The judge's job was a road of no return. The judge's expression was calm. I don't know what you're talking about. Everything I do is to uphold the organization's rules. And your actions violate the organization's rules. Even if you talk nonsense, you won't be able to escape punishment. Now give me the whip. You used the whip to attack people in a restaurant in public. With so many people watching, more people will follow suit in the future. Ning Shu said, no need to accuse me. Everyone knows it. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen, who was standing behind the judge, and laughed. You're a sacrifice. /BK. Chapter 32:15. Would he still be in awe of him? It was too damaging to his image. Zhang Jiasen said, it's okay. You can go. It has nothing to do with you. She came for me. But I want to ask you for a favor. The judge hesitated for a moment and said, say. Zhang Jiasen glanced at Ning Shu, who was waving the whip. His ears were filled with the sound of the whip. It was like the sound of death. I ask the judge to report this matter. Report it truthfully so that I won't be killed by her in vain. The judge nodded. Don't worry about this. I'm the judge. I will report it truthfully. The other party was too arrogant. But don't worry. The organization will send people over. Hold on a little longer. The judge felt that if he really released the barrier, it would not be good for his reputation. He had no sense of justice. It was clear who was right and who was wrong in this matter. So the judge still had to protect Zhang Jiasen until the organization came to rescue him. Zhang Jiasen's mouth curled up. Thank you. I will find a way to return your loss. After all, you did it for me. When the judge heard this, he felt a little better. But when he thought of the loss of soul power, he still felt his heart twitch. How much soul power was that? Ning Shu saw the judge's indifferent look and could not help but frown. If he had a turtle shell, of course, he would be happy. But facing a turtle shell, Ning Shu felt quite bad. So much time had passed. He felt Zhang Jiasen looking at him meaningfully. Ning Shu sped up and kept releasing the will of death, wanting to break the turtle shell. Not only the will of death, Ning Shu also added the power of the law imprint. He did not believe that with so much power added together, it could not break the turtle shell. Pa! The whip landed on the barrier, and the barrier became transparent at a speed visible to the naked eye. With another lash of the whip, the barrier burst like a bubble with a popping sound. The expressions of the two people inside the barrier changed drastically. The Nephilic judge immediately tried to protect the person behind her. Ning Shu swung her whip, wanting to sweep Zhang Jiasen away. But suddenly, Zhang Jiasen disappeared. Ning Shu looked around and saw that the Grand Elder had taken Zhang Jiasen away. Ning Shu heaved a sigh of relief. Therefore, the two judges had to protect Zhang Jiasen. On the surface, she was the one causing trouble. This was a trap set up by those people. Now that things had turned out this way, they were using the organization to punish her. And Zhang Jiasen was just one of them. Ning Shu looked at the grand uncle. If she couldn't survive this time, then so be it. But if she could, then she would definitely turn that faction upside down and not let them live in peace. The Grand Elder looked at Ning Shu indifferently. I told you not to cause trouble. It seems that you really don't want to live anymore. Zhang Jiasen mimicked Ning Shu. She tilted her head and looked at Ning Shu. She stood behind the Grand Elder and mouthed, I told you, you can't kill me. Ning Shu took a deep breath and said, I want to live. Who wants to die if they can live? The Grand Elder smiled faintly. He usually had a cold face, but this smile was really, a little scary. If you want to live, then you wouldn't be so unscrupulous. The organization's punishment for you is to erase your will. Ning Shu narrowed her eyes, and her pupils contracted. There were probably many people behind this decision. A tug of war was inevitable. Ning Shu looked at the Grand Elder and took 2 steps back. Should she run or fight now? The Grand Elder took out his gun indifferently. The black muzzle was pointed at Ning Shu's head. His glasses glowed with a cold luster. Ning Shu also smiled and swung the whip in her hand. She probably couldn't run away. Then she could only fight. But, Ning Shu glanced at Zhang Jiasen. If he couldn't get rid of Zhang Jiasen, he would die. It was really unreconciled. But it was also disgusting to let Zhang Jiasen die with him. What a toad. It was so disgusting. The Grand Elder fired a shot at Ning Shu, aiming at Ning Shu's head. Ning Shu quickly dodged. He wouldn't just stand there and let people hit him. It was very painful. Ning Shu dodged the first shot, but the second and third followed. They attacked him from the left and the middle. Ning Shu didn't know where to escape to. She could only choose to run head-on into a bullet. She was ready to pull Grand Elder Tai Shu and self-detonate her soul in the face of death. Her soul was the body of the will of death. If her consciousness was erased, a new person would be cultivated. If she self-destructed, these people wouldn't be able to cultivate a new one. The Grand Elder looked indifferently at Ning Shu, who was running towards him. He fired several shots in a row. The bullets penetrated Ning Shu's forehead. Ning Shu didn't die, but a force was superimposed on her soul through the bullets. Finally, there seemed to be some kind of force exploding in her body. The explosion directly made Ning Shu's consciousness blur. All kinds of senses were disappearing, but Ning Shu endured it. Her footsteps only paused for a moment, and then she rushed towards the Grand Elder at a faster speed. If she self-destructed, even if she couldn't kill the Grand Elder, it would affect Zhang Jiasen. The Grand Elder fired even faster. The bullets continuously penetrated Ning Shu's soul. Ning Shu still didn't stop, but her soul was getting weaker and weaker. This made Ning Shu worried that the energy of the self-destruction wouldn't be enough to kill the Grand Elder. If it couldn't kill Zhang Jiasen, she would suffer a great loss. Ning Shu ran while swinging her whip. She wanted to throw Zhang Jiasen over. If she couldn't withstand the bullets, then she would roll Zhang Jiasen over. When the bullets penetrated the soul, Ning Shu could hear the sound of the soul being torn apart. It was like a piece of paper being torn apart. There was a crisp sound. The Grand Elder kicked Zhang Jiasun away and made him roll out of the battlefield. Ning Shu watched Zhang Jiasun being kicked away. She just wanted to explode on the spot. If Zhang Jiasun was taken away, how could she drag Zhang Jiasun to die with her? Now, she would die. Ning Shu tried hard to keep her will from collapsing. She still rushed towards the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder's shooting speed was like a strafing gun. Countless bullets penetrated Ning Shu's body. The judge next to her was stunned. He had never seen someone who wanted to die like this. What was she doing? She didn't die after being shot so many times. Why did she have to rush over to die? She really didn't want to live. Ning Shu was dizzy. There was a rumbling sound in her ears. Something in the depths of her soul was cracking. Endless bullets penetrated Ning Shu's body. There were many bullet holes. Some parts of her soul didn't have time to heal, leaving bullet holes one after another. Ning Shu's face was full of holes. It was a shocking sight. Even so, she was still alive. The Grand Elder paused for a moment and then condensed more power. Chapter 32:16. The Grand Elder's spear directly exploded half of Ning Shu's head. Ning Shu finally stopped, not far from the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder looked at Ning Shu indifferently and didn't shoot again. What are you thinking? Ning Shu only had half of her face left. Because it hadn't been repaired in time, she looked like a zombie with only half a head. All kinds of annihilation forces were exploding in her body. What could she think? Ever since the Grand Elder protected Zhang Jiasun and wanted to erase her will, Ning Shu keenly found an opportunity, although the success rate was very small. There was a 90% chance that he would be. But so what? He would just endure it. He would die if he could. If he couldn't, then so be it. Ever since that death, Ning Shu didn't care about her life anymore. Originally, people who should die would die sooner or later. It didn't matter. It was just that this conflict came earlier than she had imagined. Ning Shu smiled. I was wrong. I'll do it again next time. Sorry, I'm relying on my immortality. If you can kill me, then you're capable. But don't think about using my body to cultivate a new person. Everyone is stirring up trouble. Some people are doing it secretly. Sorry, I'm relying on my immortality to do it openly. If you can kill me, then you're capable. The conflict in this matter wasn't just about killing Zhang Jiasun. The Grand Elder frowned. You really don't change. Ning Shu said, I don't want to be a grandson. If you want to kill me, then kill me. Everyone was bound to die. What was there to be afraid of? If she wanted to cultivate a new person, she was afraid it wouldn't work because she would destroy herself. The Grand Elder snorted. Arrogant. Ning Shu nodded. I'm very arrogant. Even if you have the ability, you won't die. When the sea of law dissipates, you will all die. But I won't die. I'll watch you walk step by step to the side and watch you die. I'm arrogant. I'm happy. I can use endless time to torture you to death. The secret of success is to live long. If I don't die, will you all be so unhappy? Then you will be even more unhappy. It's not like I got my immortality for nothing. Why can't I show off? So what if I get killed? I love to self-destruct. I can't take it anymore. 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 Wait a little longer, wait a little longer, wait a little longer, wait a little longer, just be a little stronger. Stronger a little, wait a little more, just a little more. Day after day, year after year, 10,000 years after 10,000 years, eternal life after eternal life. It was as if everyone else was standing in place, waiting for her. What was the point of living like this? She had already said that she was not afraid of death. The Grand Elder sneered, I don't know why you feel so wronged. Ning Shu, I don't feel wronged. Since I did it, I knew the consequences. I never said that I was wronged. What's there to feel wronged about? There were only two outcomes. She could either endure it or lose everything. She cared about others, but would others care about her? Ning Shu couldn't be bothered to endure it anymore. It's so boring. I'm going to jump in. So what if I know there's a pit in front of me? If I don't jump in, do I know what this pit looks like? Now I see what this pit looks like. The opportunity had appeared. Ning Shu curled her lips into a smile. She was waiting for the right opportunity. Now, the opportunity was in front of her. After cutting off Xingqing's arm, she no longer cared about life and death. Death? Sorry, this thing had no effect on her at all. Even if she didn't die, she still had to do it. What a great thing. It was nothing more than death. The Grand Elder glanced at Ning Shu and condensed more power. Obviously, he wanted to kill Ning Shu in one fell swoop. Ning Shu stood still, but her expression froze for a moment. Half of her face was expressionless as she looked behind the Grand Elder. Xingqing. Xingqing is rushing over. He's going to kiss you again. The Grand Elder glanced back. Ning Shu seized the opportunity and exploded with a bang. Her body suddenly exploded like a grenade. Ning Shu used up 90% of her power to explode. She immediately disappeared in front of the Grand Elder. Ning Shu returned to the system space and immediately took the kidney-strengthening fruit, the peerless martial art, and the smart brain. She immediately left the system space. She immediately cut off the connection with the backup system. She used the law of water to hide her aura and appeared in the darkness of the void. The surroundings were very quiet and dark. There was no sign of life. Everything seemed to be still. Ning Shu hugged a few things and snorted. 90% of her soul power and soul origin was given to the organization. She would never return to that organization in the future. As for being wanted by the organization, it didn't matter. There were so many planes. Why don't you come and find her one by one? If you find her, just kill her. Everyone would go their separate ways. No one would be disgusted by the other. As for being strong, she would have to survive in the Law Sea for a long time in this state. If she had run away directly, she wouldn't have been able to escape. Instead, she would have used a state of mutual destruction. Of course, she still had the chance to admit her mistake and hand over the God-striking whip. Accept the punishment of the organization. Deal with it 1,000 times, 10,000 times, and always deal with the star stone. Or hang her up and burn her soul with candlelight. Or apologize to Zhang Jiasan again. She was not qualified to be the city lord and would be stripped of her city lord medal. It didn't matter. She didn't want anything now. The law cities, the city lord medal, they were all gone. Anyway, she had only collected a few taxes in these cities. It wasn't as much as selling a fruit. She could endure it, but if Ning Shu wasted this opportunity, she didn't know how long she would have to wait. Since the time had come, she would do what needed to be done. In the organization, Ning Shu felt that she would never see the end. It was a marathon with no end. Sorry. Now, I don't want to compete with you. I'll watch you run from the side. I'll watch you get eliminated by the referee. Half of my efforts will be in vain. Or I'll almost reach the end. Lying on the side and watching you run, it feels so good. Ning Shu stayed in the darkness, enduring the power of the soul explosion. This power was attacking her will, destroying it. Ning Shu dispelled this power, using the will of death to annihilate this power. If this power was not dispelled, then she would have to endure this pain. Ning Shu opened the world of reincarnation and entered the world of reincarnation. The world of reincarnation was safer. However, her soul was transparent now. It was as if she was invisible. Ning Shu appeared behind Zhu Jun. While talking to Zhu Jun looked around. Pai Shu, where are you? Ning Shu said faintly, I'm behind you. My soul power is almost gone, so you can't see me, /BK. Chapter 32:17. Zhu Jun could only determine Ning Shu's location based on her voice, but he still missed Ning Shu. How did you become like this? Ning Shu said, something happened and I became like this. It's not a big deal. Use your merits sparingly. You may not have any in the future, but it won't be a big deal in the future. Ning Shu laughed. Haven't you always wanted to go to the world of the living? You can go to whatever world you want in the future. Although Zhu Jun couldn't see Ning Shu, she felt that Ning Shu was in a good mood. What happened? You look very happy. Ning Shu said, nothing. It's just that some things are finally settled. I don't need to be told that I don't want to leave anymore. Although Zhu Jun didn't know what had happened, she still nodded. That's good. As long as you're happy. Which world are you going to go to? Ning Shu said, I can't go for the time being. I'm not in a good situation now. I need some time to deal with the abnormality in my body. The power of senior uncle on her body was like maggots attached to bones. It couldn't be removed and was eating away at her will. She had to dispel this power. Moreover, Ning Shu thought of one thing. In order to track Xingqing, senior uncle had placed a surveillance object in her world of samsara. Someone was actually spying on his backyard. This couldn't be. She had to find it. Otherwise, her position would be exposed. Ning Shu wandered in the world of samsara. Her spiritual power scanned the world over and over again. She didn't miss a single grain of sand. She was afraid that the other party had done something to her world. Finally, she found a mark next to the reincarnation pool. Ning Shu directly destroyed the mark violently. When Ning Shu violently destroyed the mark, senior uncle's eyebrows twitched. Obviously, he felt the mark. The power transmitted by the mark made him frown. He narrowed his eyes. He knew that Ning Shu was still alive, but he didn't show any expression. He was indifferent to Ning Shu's departure. The organization couldn't operate without a task taker. It didn't matter if they encountered it or not. She thought too highly of herself. Her consciousness would eventually be obliterated. Ning, a plate of dishes, Shu, he ran away, how wonderful. Ning Shu destroyed the imprint and went to take a look at the other rebirth pools. He took a look at the rebirth pool in the second world of reincarnation. The second world's pool of rebirth had already been completed, but this world did not have a single soul. As for the black fog that was born in this world, he might not be able to return to this world. Since he liked Abyssal Prefect, he might as well follow Abyssal Prefect. Moreover, His Excellency had also said that the black fog would be useful in places where there were more samsara realms. As for this world, Ning Shu could manage it himself. Zhu Jun said to Ning Shu, your soul is so weak that you can't even see it. Do you want to catch some wandering souls to replenish your soul power? In the world of reincarnation, there were many souls that would specifically devour those souls that had no consciousness to strengthen their own souls. No one dared to provoke a powerful soul in the world of samsara, while a weak soul would make a detour when they saw a powerful soul. Ning Shu supported his chin with his hand. Although it seemed that he could not touch his chin now, he said, you can collect them. Let's talk about it after we collect them. Although they had no consciousness, their soul power still contained various emotions and desires. Ning Shu now had to resist the power of his body and devour this impure soul power to affect his body. Then it was better for her to remain transparent. It did not matter if she was not in a hurry. She was happy to be a Buddhist woman. She would collect the soul power and then slowly study how to purify it. Her soul was weak first. Ning Shu put a piece of kidney-strengthening fruit in his mouth. No matter what, he could not forget to eat fruits. Eating some fruits could make his body stronger. Now there was no need to rush to do missions. She would not go back to the organization. She could not go back. If she went back, she would be courting death. Ning Shu asked, how much soul power did the array collect? It cost a lot of money to buy so many star stones. It should be able to collect a lot of soul power. Zhu Jun said to Ning Shu, I'm not afraid to hurt you. It really didn't collect much. The souls without consciousness were directly absorbed by the souls with consciousness. How could it be the array's turn to absorb the soul power? The battle between souls in the world of samsara is very fierce. Zhu Jun directly broke Ning Shu's fantasy. You can let the skeletons go out and look for wandering souls. This was a bit embarrassing. They had spent a lot of money, but it was useless. Ning Shu said. Okay, you go ahead. She wanted to keep her consciousness alive so that it would not be devoured and destroyed by the remaining power in her body. Zhu Jun left. Ning Shu sat down cross-legged and grimaced. The power of her body hurt her, very much. This power was eating away at her. She also had to eat away at this power to prevent herself from being hurt. This was a protracted battle. If she lost, her consciousness would dissipate. If she won, of course, she would be reborn. As for the soul power, whether the soul was strong or not was secondary. Zhu Jun took the skeletons to look for wandering souls without consciousness and collected the soul power of these wandering souls. A group of skeletons was mighty. When the souls in the world of samsara saw these skeletons, they all avoided them. They did not want to fight with these skeletons. First, the skeletons' bones were too hard. Second, the golden light of merit on these skeletons was too dazzling. Moreover, these merits had a restraining effect on souls. Xia Mengtao happened to bump into Zhu Jun and the others. She saw so many skeletons and asked, what happened? Zhu Jun said, we're looking for wandering souls without consciousness. Pippi Shu is probably going to die. The soul was so transparent that it could not be seen. It was hanging on by one breath. Xia Mengtao was a bit confused and asked, what happened? What happened to her? Where is she now? In the world of samsara, Xia Mengtao was following the souls with deep resentment. Behind them, she was secretly absorbing the resentment. Zhu Jun said, you can't see where she is now. Xia Mengtao was confused. What did he mean? You want wandering souls without consciousness. I know a place where there are such places. It's in a canyon. There are fruits in the canyon. Many people like to go there to pick the fruits, but they never come back. That tree can absorb souls. Zhu Jun thought it was a good place. The tree could absorb the soul power. They were bones and skeletons. It was the tree's ability to absorb them. Zhu Jun asked Xia Mengtao to take him to the canyon. There were some wandering souls without consciousness. Their eyes were empty. They drifted aimlessly and did not even have the instinct to jump into the reincarnation pool/BK. Chapter 32:18. Zhu Jun put away these souls and saw the tree that Xia Mengtao was talking about. Xia Mengtao didn't dare to get close to this tree. After all, the tree would take away her soul, and resentment was useless. Therefore, she stood far away and watched the skeletons pick the fruits. This fruit was the favorite thing of souls. It was said that the fruit contained soul power, but it was very dangerous to pick the fruit. Therefore, even though there were so many souls coveting the fruit, the tree was still full of heavy fruits. It was very attractive and seductive, but as soon as they got close, the vines would withdraw their souls. Moreover, this tree had soul tentacles. Once they touched it, they couldn't escape. Some souls couldn't resist the temptation and ran over, but the result was no exception. There was no luck. They were all absorbed by the tree. Even if they cried and howled, they couldn't escape. Xia Mengtao had seen people being forcibly embedded into the tree trunk and integrated into it, becoming nourishment for the tree. Fortunately, these fruits weren't very tempting to Xia Mengtao. They were not as tempting as the resentment of some souls. Although Xia Mengtao had never tasted this fruit, she hoped that these skeletons would get some so that she could taste it and make these souls pounce on it one after another. Although there were so many precedents. Zhu Jun raised his head and looked at the tree. There were so many fruits on the tree. They were so heavy that the branches were bent. Feeling that someone had invaded, the fruit tree immediately stretched out its soul tentacles, wanting to integrate the intruder into its trunk. However, many skeletons directly shattered the bones on the ground and then reassembled. The reassembled skeletons were even taller than the spirit-replenishing fruit tree. It was too convenient to pick the fruits. These soul tentacles wrapped around the skeletons, but the skeletons directly tore these soul tentacles apart like pulling strings. The skeletons picked all the fruits on the fruit tree, making the tree very angry. The densely packed soul tentacles stretched out, wanting to entangle the skeletons. They were covered in a layer of spiders. However, the skeletons casually tore off these tentacles, as if they were spiders. After picking the fruits, the skeletons retreated. Xia Mengtao was looking at the canyon. Seeing that the skeletons had all come out, she immediately said, "It's good that you're fine." Zhu Jun gave Xia Mengtao a few fruits and said, "Take them and try them." Xia Mengtao didn't stand on ceremony and accepted the fruit. She wiped it on her body and bit into it. The taste wasn't sweet or bland. It was white, but it did contain a bit of soul force, but not much. After eating the fruit, Xia Mengtao did not feel that this fruit had the ability to make people go crazy. It was not as good as resentment. Was this thing worth so many souls sacrificing their lives for? So many souls wanted to eat the food that they ate. It was not very delicious. Xia Mengtao finished eating the fruit and looked at the core. The core was a lifelike curled-up baby. Xia Mengtao was so scared that she almost threw the core away. She said, "This thing is a little scary." Why did he feel like he had just eaten a baby? Zhu Jun brought the fruits to Ning Shu, but Ning Shu's soul was so transparent that it couldn't be seen. Zhu Jun could only shout as he walked, "Pai Pai Shu, where did you come out to get things? We found something for you to eat." Ning Shu was speechless. "I'm here," Ning Shu said. She had now become a person with no sense of existence. Zhu Jun could only follow the direction of Ning Shu's voice and handed the fruit to her, but it was still in the wrong direction. Ning Shu walked over and took the fruit in her hand. She said, "This is the spirit-replenishing fruit. Before this world became the world of samsara, there were soul stones and spirit-replenishing fruits. Unexpectedly, this world became the world of samsara. The spirit-replenishing fruit tree survived, and it seemed that it would survive better. After all, the world of samsara didn't have many things except souls. The spirit-replenishing fruit tree absorbed souls, which was simply a unique growth environment. Although there was not much soul force in this fruit, it was something that Ning Shu urgently needed. The more soul force he had, the more likely he would win. Xia Mengtao looked around blankly and couldn't see Ning Shu's soul. She asked, "How did you become like this? Did something happen?" Ning Shu avoided the important and said lightly, "Nothing happened." There was no need to mention the past. It was meaningless to mention it. The most important thing was now. Now, she had to protect her consciousness and will before talking about other things. Only by protecting it could she wander around. Ning Shu saw that Xia Mengtao seemed to be much stronger and said, "You have absorbed a lot of resentment, right?" It was good that she had absorbed it. The resentment had less influence on the world. With a world of samsara, she could have a place to stay. Xia Mengtao absorbed the resentment, which was beneficial to the world. He said to her, continue to absorb the resentment. It can be considered as protecting this world. In the future, this world would be a place for everyone to stay. They must protect it well. Xia Mengtao nodded, indicating that she understood. However, with her back to Ning Shu, this kind of conversation was really awkward. Ning Shu ate these fruits without hesitation. He ate dozens of them in a row and felt that he couldn't eat anymore. The help to his soul had also weakened a lot. He stopped eating and told Xia Mengtao to eat more. Xia Mengtao was also a soul. Eating this kind of fruit could also strengthen her soul force. Xia Mengtao waved her hand and said, "I'd better not eat. It's good that I can absorb the resentment." The core of this fruit is a person. Ning Shu had long known that the core of the fruit was a person. He even suspected that the flesh of the fruit outside was to provide nutrition for the core inside. Let the core absorb the soul force in the flesh. Could it be that this tree wanted to give birth to life? However, it didn't really give birth to life. He didn't know if this was the case. Giving birth to life was not a simple thing. If this tree could really give birth to life, he wouldn't pick fruits in the future. The help she could get from eating this fruit was also very little. If she let it grow, could it give birth to life in the world of samsara? Ning Shu thought it was a little difficult. First of all, the world of samsara was not an environment for living creatures to live in. However, since this tree wanted to grow, then let it grow. Speaking of the spirit-replenishing fruit, he thought of the kidney-strengthening fruit grove. It was so big, but the things that originally belonged to him were gone. She had already left. The organization couldn't give her 40% of the spirit-replenishing fruit. It would be good if they didn't kill her. How could they give her things back? Ning Shu wanted to sneak into the world of nothingness and pull out a fruit tree to plant. He didn't know if he could successfully plant it in the world of samsara. In addition to the fruit, Zhu Jun also gave Ning Shu some soul force of wandering souls. However, these soul forces were not pure and needed to be purified before they could be used/BK. Chapter 32:19. Ning Shu was walking on a tightrope right now, so he had to be very careful. He would rather not absorb this tainted soul power than lose everything because of this tainted soul power. In his current state, Ning Shu felt that he could still hold on. If he really absorbed the tainted soul power, it would be worse. However, the soul power was still very precious. Ning Shu asked Zhu Jun to keep the soul power and think of a way to purify it. As for the purification method, Ning Shu felt that he could spend some time thinking about it slowly. Now that he had left the organization, he did not need to deal with those miscellaneous matters anymore. He had too much time to do what he wanted to do. Now, he had to deal with the important matters first. Ning Shu asked Xia Mengtao, "Look at the resentment in the soul power. Can you absorb it?" Xia Mengtao nodded. Yes, yes. However, it was useless to just absorb the resentment. Humans had 7 emotions and 6 desires: love, hate, greed, and obsession. The soul energy that could be absorbed was a kind of pure energy that had nothing else in it. Ning Shu endured the pain in his soul and spoke to these people. Not long after, he felt that he could not hold on any longer. After sending everyone away, he squatted to the side and endured the pain of being devoured. This power was especially domineering and unrestrained. It would not stop until it had devoured her. Ning Shu used all his strength to stop this power. He had to keep his mind clear, even though it was very painful. However, he persevered. There was a wide sea in front of him, and there was no need for him to be swollen. Ning Shu was resisting the damage, but the 3 law imprints on his body had all collapsed. All 3 of them had collapsed in an instant, without any warning, for no reason at all. She was no longer the city lord, so her law imprints were confiscated. Was it because of this? These laws were comprehended by her or obtained from others. What did it have to do with the organization? Could it be because she comprehended them in the organization's law space, so she had to take them back? Since that was the case, she might as well take it back and make a clean break. Even without the nomological imprint, her comprehension was still there and she could still use these nomological laws. The three laws collapsed at the same time. Ning Shu's heart ached for a moment, but he soon relaxed. He had chosen his own path, and these losses were within his expectations. Originally, the three laws had an additional effect. The laws could protect the soul to a certain extent. However, now that all three had been lost, Ning Shu's situation became somewhat worse. There was nothing in the world that could escape annihilation and death. Only death was eternal. Ning Shu directly used the will of death to resist these forces. However, when these two powers clashed, it was like pouring boiling water on hot oil. They directly exploded on Ning Shu's soul. Ning Shu felt the pain. It was as if he was being cut into pieces. However, he could endure it. Enduring it on his own was completely different from enduring it on someone else's behalf. He endured until he saw the light of dawn, but when others told him to endure, he had to endure forever. The most important thing was to try his best to keep his mind clear and not lose his mind. If he couldn't endure it and his will began to weaken, then it would really be over. She had to live to disgust others. Her free life had just begun. Why should she give up so early? Ning Shu's side gradually began to gain the upper hand. However, that force suddenly strengthened. It was like a flood dragon coming out of the sea. Ning Shu felt that the other party was fighting in her body. Although it was far away, it was using this force to annihilate and kill her. Every time this force moved, Ning Shu felt unbearable pain. However, she gritted her teeth and endured it. She also strengthened her side. It doesn't matter. I'll just do it. My own soul doesn't even matter. Ning Shu relied on her determination to fight this force. When the other party strengthened, she also strengthened her side. Let's see who would annihilate who first. However, she was at a disadvantage. Because it was in her soul, the pain caused by the battle was all borne by her alone. Ning Shu smiled. Now, this was the only way to torment her. She should be happy. Ning Shu ate a few more spirit-nourishing fruits. However, at least she could eat until she was full. Only when she was full would she have the strength to endure the pain. There were a few times when Ning Shu's mind became blurry. She almost couldn't hold on to her consciousness. However, when she thought that she was still alive while the other party failed at the last minute, Ning Shu felt extremely good. She felt that her body was full of energy and could hold on for a long time. It didn't make sense. After leaving the organization, she really should die. She hadn't experienced her free life yet. She hadn't gone out to play. She hadn't seen what was in the depths of the void. There was still the sea of stars. It wouldn't be so easy to kill her. Her will was the will of death. As long as she was firm enough, she would definitely be able to withstand it. In order to divert the pain, Ning Shu thought of all kinds of things to divert her attention. She thought that since she had left this world, she could return to the plane of her birth. Even if she didn't have to appear in front of her family, she could stay in that world for as long as she wanted. Maybe she would get tired of it and go to other worlds. Maybe she could obtain the power of the soul through other methods. Should she open a studio and do something to fulfill people's wishes and then obtain the power of the soul? Although she couldn't purify the power of the soul now, she had to have the power of the soul first. Then she could talk about the purification. She could bring the skeleton to the world and open a mysterious studio. She could change it with every shot. Maybe she could not go to those planes of the world. She could go to the depths of the void and see those bugs that ate planes. Was her royal brother still alive? She wanted to catch up with her brother. Ning Shu thought about it and laughed. The souls passing by were frightened by Ning Shu's laughter. They looked left and right but didn't see anyone. What the hell? Ning Shu persevered with the strength of her body. The pain was real. Every moment, she felt that the depths of her soul were rumbling. Her head felt like it was being crushed by a wheel again and again. In an instant, it exploded like a watermelon falling to the ground. She endured it over and over again. It felt like she had died many times. It was a test of her psychological endurance. Ning Shu smiled slightly. She wasn't even afraid of death. Why would she be afraid of this? At most, she would endure it for a long time. What made her happy was that the enemy's strength was getting weaker and weaker. Victory was in sight. The will of death was really a good thing. As long as she was in pain for a while, she could completely annihilate this enemy. /BK Chapter 32-22. She was less than 30 years old. She was gorgeously dressed, and her makeup was quite exquisite. If not for her weak soul, one would not be able to tell that she was a ghost. When she heard someone speak, she immediately looked around in horror. Ghost? Who is it? There were ghosts and skeletons. What was this place? She was afraid. Ning Shu said, "I'm the one who repaid your wishes. You're already dead. What unfulfilled wishes do you have that you need me to fulfill?" Now that he could talk to the client face to face, such a task was actually very easy to complete. "I'm dead." The woman was a little confused. Finally, she seemed to remember something. "Yes, I'm dead. I was killed by someone." The woman seemed to have thought of something and became very agitated. She did not care who Ning Shu was. "Can you help me take revenge?" "I want revenge." Ning Shu said mysteriously, "What is it? Tell me." The woman gritted her teeth and said, "I was cheated by a mistress. That man lied to me. He was married, but he didn't tell me. I was ready to marry him and thought that he was the one for me in this life. But I didn't expect a woman to appear and say that she was his wife. The two of them were legally married. In the end, I became a mistress. And that woman even hired someone to kill me. I can't accept it. Can you help me?" the woman asked. Ning Shu was not sure if the woman was telling the truth. Which man's wife dared to kill? This was a legal society. Ning Shu asked, "If what you said is true, how did you die?" I was in a car accident. A car ran straight into me and I died on the spot. She must have done it. She did it. Just because he loved me, she wanted to kill me." Ning Shu nodded. "He lied to you. She killed you. Do you want revenge?" "Yes, of course." Ning Shu said, "Are you sure what you said is true? If it's false, you may be punished. And I only need to search your soul to know your life. How old is that man? What's his name? What's his wife's name? Does he have any children? How's his family situation?" Without a plot, Ning Shu wasn't sure if this person was telling the truth or not. Did she really get cheated on, or was she lying on purpose? Moreover, no one knew if it was that man's wife who killed him. There were too many uncertainties. The woman choked and hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I'm telling the truth. That man is in his 40s. Ning Shu was speechless. It wasn't that she discriminated against people who got married late, but it was rare for a man to be unmarried in his 40s, unless he was a bachelor from a poor family. Ning Shu said, "Oh, if it's true, then there's no such thing as an idiot's lunch. If you want me to avenge you, you'll have to pay the price." The woman asked, "What price do I have to pay?" Ning Shu said, "Your soul." The woman's expression changed drastically. "You want my soul? I will only extract a portion of your soul energy as a reward." The woman thought for a moment. I've decided not to take revenge. Ning Shu could tell from the beginning that this woman didn't have a strong desire for revenge and didn't want to pay a price to counterattack. And most importantly, there were some things that were hidden. Her resentment wasn't strong, and she didn't look like she had a blood feud. Usually, only those with strong feelings could be ruthless enough to pay any price. Ning Shu tried to scare her. Since you're here, it means that we're fated to meet. I'll eat you. The woman was so scared that her face turned pale. She was dumbfounded. She thought she could get paid, but she bumped into a demon who wanted to eat her. Are you sure you're telling the truth? When I invade your brain, you'll be in great pain. Are you sure? The woman hesitated for a moment before nodding. I'm telling the truth. Someone else killed me. After pestering her for so long, Ning Shu was sure that this woman was not her first client. She wasn't honest. I don't want to take revenge. If revenge breeds revenge, will there ever be an end to it? I'm already won. Let's forget about the past. The woman quickly shook her head. Ning Shu curled his lips. It must be the other way around. She was the mistress, but she said she was the mistress. It probably had nothing to do with the man's wife. Ning Shu was dispirited. Boring. He took his first business in high spirits and found out that this was the situation. What a waste of time. Ning Shu looked at the woman's colorful face curiously. Then, he used the soul-searching technique to search through her memories. He skimmed through her life as if he was looking at flowers on horseback. She was indeed the mistress, but she wasn't the mistress. Instead, she was the mistress. Then, she died in a car accident. As for the car accident, it probably had nothing to do with the man's wife. That wife was just a housewife, busy with family matters and taking care of the children. She didn't even know that her husband had a mistress outside. After being searched by Ning Shu, the woman felt a sharp pain in her head. After a while, the pain disappeared. Maybe she knew that there was an invisible being doing something to her. She became frightened, and her face was distorted. Was he really going to eat her? Zhu Jun asked, what should we do with this woman? He could see that this business was definitely over. The skeletons spoke. The woman was terrified. What kind of place was this? She burst into tears. She died at such a young age. It wasn't easy for her to get a house to please a man. Was it easy to please a man? It was not easy at all. She had to know a man's likes and dislikes. She also had to accurately sense a man's emotions. She had to endure any grievances. When she was in a bad mood, she had to comfort him. When he needed to vent, she had to let him vent. It wasn't easy to get some money from a man, but she died in the end. She was not reconciled, very not reconciled. Ning Shu said emotionlessly, where should we go? Throw it to the world of samsara. This wasn't a real counterattack. It was pure coincidence that she bumped into the bounded domain. The woman had been very confused, but now she heard that she was going to be thrown to the world of samsara. What was that place? Why was her life so miserable? Zhu Jun threw the soul out of the bounded domain. As for what would happen to this soul in the future, he didn't need to care. Ning Shu said to Zhu Jun with flagging interest, should I put up a notice? Otherwise, I have to say it every time. It's too tiring. Those who really wanted to counterattack would naturally see it. It was really difficult to have a business. Zhu Jun said, it's better to collect wandering souls in the world of samsara. Those wandering souls have more soul power than this. Chapter 32-23. Many a little makes a mickle. She had to find something to do in her immortal life. She also needed soul power. After all, she was now so transparent that others couldn't see her. She just didn't expect her first customer to be such a weirdo. There would probably be more weirdos in the future. Zhu Jun, when can we buy a computer? We have to keep up with the times and know what's going on in the world every day. Ning Shu, we don't have money. What could they do without money? Zhu Jun, can't we get some money? Ning Shu, we can't. We're outsiders in this world. We don't kill, burn, or steal. If she had a solid soul, she could make money. What kind of business could she do? Zhu Jun, we should have asked that woman for money. She wasted so much of our time and lied to us. Ning Shu. You could have caught her. She had already run away. What was the point of talking about this? I'm going to rest. Don't call me if there's nothing. Ning Shu yawned and rested. Ning Shu closed her eyes and thought about how to purify the soul power. She looked at the soul power in the container. The soul power was a gray gas. The gas contained all kinds of emotions, including the 7 emotions and 6 desires of a person. A person's life would be filled with anger, sadness, jealousy, and hatred. No soul was pure, unless it was a newborn baby. It had already been purified by the rebirth pool. How could she get rid of the impurities? Ning Shu used her mind power to invade the soul power. She wanted to use her mind power to remove the impurities. However, the impurities were attached to the soul power. Normal methods couldn't purify them. Zhu Jun said, can't you absorb it directly? Even Xiao Xia can absorb it directly. Can't you? Ning Shu, I haven't absorbed it before. I heard that it's not good for the soul. Ever since she started doing missions, she had been absorbing pure soul power. Zhu Jun said directly, if you can't purify it, then absorb it directly. Even Peach can absorb it directly. Why can't you? Some things can be turned into treasures. Ning Shu felt that if she absorbed it, she wouldn't be able to get rid of it even if she tried. These 7 emotions and 6 desires would give birth to calamity beasts, those extremely stinky calamity beasts. It took a lot of courage to get such a dirty thing on his body. Ning Shu still didn't have the courage to absorb such soul power. Zhu Jun said, wouldn't it be better to use these things as your own weapons, just like Peach? Ning Shu rubbed his forehead. How could it be so simple? If he absorbed it himself, it was very likely that his mood would become extremely irritable and different. Doing too many quests could change one's temperament, let alone directly absorbing them. Once it was absorbed and tainted, it would be impossible to remove it. Ning Shu looked at the balls of soul power in the container. If he absorbed them directly, it would save him the purification process. If he left the organization, he would not be able to exchange for pure soul power. But now that he had left, there was nothing to regret. He would eventually find a way. However, directly absorbing it was also a solution. The side effect was that one's soul would be contaminated. But if he really absorbed these things for his own use like Xia Mengtao, it would become a help to him. But the consequence was that his soul would be destroyed, and he would likely become an existence like the calamity beasts. He would have a lot of time to find a way to purify his soul power. Zhu Jun only gave a suggestion. As for whether he accepted it or not, he didn't care. It was quite boring here. He said, then I'll go back to the world of samsara. I wonder how those little bastards are doing. Ning Shu said, then go back. While you're at it, go and see how Xia Mengtao is doing. Leave her alone in that world. You can bring her here. Absorbing resentment for the plane, at least you'll have some merit. There's merit. I can absorb it too, Zhu Jun said immediately. Ning Shu said. Then you can absorb it. No one is stopping you. If everyone could absorb it, wouldn't it be like heaven? Ordinary creatures wouldn't be able to create resentment without knowing it. After Zhu Jun left, Ning Shu pointed at the container. To be honest, she was very tempted. She really wanted to absorb the soul power directly. She directly absorbed it like Xingqing. It seemed that Jing Qing didn't have any side effects. Was it because he was born with thick skin? He was born like an elephant. She was a small ant. A little power could crush her. She couldn't bear it. She really wanted to drink it. She really wanted to. Forget it. She'd better eat the fruit first. Eating a kidney-strengthening fruit was more reliable than swallowing this dirty soul power. Ning Shu had a piece of fruit in her mouth. She felt something hit the boundary, and a soul floated in. There was business. Ning Shu immediately took out the piece of fruit in her mouth and cleared her throat. "Who are you?" The man looked tired. The shirt he was wearing was very wrinkled. There was dirt on the collar and cuffs. His tie was crooked. He was holding a suit jacket in his hand. He looked like a man in dire straits. When he heard Ning Shu's voice, he didn't shout like the woman from before. However, he was so frightened that his face changed. "There's a notice over there. Take a look." Ning Shu found a piece of paper and wrote the notice. The man stared at the notice for a long time. He was probably trying to understand the meaning of these words. "I don't know these words." Ning Shu was speechless. Damn it. Did she have to say it again? It was so damn tiring. She had to record what she said. The next time someone asked, she could just repeat it. Ning Shu repeated what she said before. The man understood. There was a strong resentment on him. Ning Shu felt that her business was coming. The man smiled sarcastically. "Start over. What use do I have for this? Living is torture. Endless torture. It's too tiring." Ning Shu was speechless. "Alright, all of you are so unique." Ning Shu was speechless. The man was very emotional. Why did she do this to me? I was so good to her. How could she betray me? Ning Shu was speechless. Why was it so difficult to accept a task? The man kept complaining. His saliva flew everywhere. Ning Shu supported her chin and pointed at the container with one hand. When could the container be filled? The man couldn't control his emotions. Ning Shu said coldly, "Shut up." This was not a place for him to vent. He had to pay for it. The man closed his mouth, but the resentment on his body rose. The man had been chattering non-stop, full of resentment, repeatedly saying the same few words. She did not know what had happened. She was speechless. Chapter 32-24. How could a man talk so much? Ning Shu couldn't get a word in edgewise. "Do you want to counterattack?" "Just one word. If you don't, leave." Ning Shu's voice was exceptionally cold. "If you don't leave, I'll eat you." There were always setbacks in business. The man stopped complaining and asked, "Do I have to pay anything?" Ning Shu said, 30% of your soul power." The man refused to counterattack. Since he refused, Ning Shu couldn't be bothered to say anything more to him. "Since you're here and have vented, do you have to give me something?" The man asked hesitantly and warily, "What do you want?" Ning Shu said, "Money. Even if you're dead, you should have money, right?" Zhu Jun had been asking for a computer every day. Ning Shu felt that he should have one too. The man was speechless. How could this be? The man was afraid of an invisible existence. He said that he had some money in his closet and a bank card. He also told Ning Shu the password. He gritted his teeth and said, "Even if I give it to someone else, I won't give it to her." Ning Shu directly released the soul and created an enchantment. There was no business even now. Ning Shu arrived at the man's house and walked through the walls. The man's house didn't look big. It was a small house and the furnishings in the house were old. Combined with the man's image, it was normal for the house to be like this. The house was empty. There was no one in the house. Ning Shu rummaged through the wardrobe and found a passbook and some cash. Ning Shu opened the passbook. It was enough to buy a computer, but not much. That man was also working hard. Why didn't he have any savings? He had money and could buy a computer now. Ning Shu floated into a computer shop, took a laptop, and placed the money on the counter. Ning Shu floated back into the barrier and began to stare intently at the soul power in the container. She was really impulsive and wanted to absorb the soul power directly. She wondered if she could absorb it. Zhu Jun brought Xia Mengtao over. Xia Mengtao looked around and asked, "Are we going to stay here in the future?" Ning Shu, "Here for now." "Here, the computer is over there." Ning Shu pointed at the table and said to Zhu Jun. Zhu Jun immediately turned into an addicted skeleton and went to fiddle with the computer. Ning Shu said to Xia Mengtao, "Do you think it's okay for me to directly absorb these soul powers?" Not only did the soul energy contain resentment, but there were also other miscellaneous things. It was as if even earthworms were able to extract the poison from the soul power. With Xia Mengtao and earthworm in front of him, Ning Shu felt that it was really feasible and could be refined. Earthworm could do it all day long, so why couldn't she? Xia Mengtao tilted her head and said, "I don't know." The skeleton said, "She doesn't know anything. It's useless for you to ask." Skeleton looked at the computer and said without turning his head. His hand moved the mouse nimbly. A pair of dark eyes stared at the computer. Ning Shu wondered if he had seen it. Ning Shu gritted his teeth. "I'm going to drink it." "Stop me." Xia Mengtao said, "Then don't drink it. I see a lot of souls floating with black energy. They don't look good. They're very ugly." Ning Shu said, "No, I want to drink it. You used to be very ugly too. You were full of black energy and resentment." Xia Mengtao said, "Don't mention the past again." Ning Shu picked up the container and took a deep breath. Then, she swallowed the gray soul power one mouthful at a time. The soul power merged with Ning Shu's soul. He immediately felt that he was full of power, but it wasn't very comfortable. Usually, he absorbed pure soul power, pure energy. But now, this energy wasn't pure at all. It was a little uncomfortable to eat it. Xia Mengtao looked at Ning Shu and said, "Wow, you're floating with black energy. I can see where you are now." Ning Shu, don't be so surprised. It was normal to have black energy floating around after absorbing this kind of impure soul power. However, the after effects came out. Ning Shu felt irritated and uncomfortable. He couldn't help but want to lose his temper. Ning Shu lay on the recliner and said to the two of them, "It's okay. Don't provoke me. I'm very unhappy now. All kinds of messy thoughts flashed through my mind. It was certain that he was full of hostility. I'm full of fucking power to destroy the world. I'll just endure it. I have to control myself." Xia Mengtao sat beside Ning Shu and asked, "Why are you doing this? If you don't want to absorb it, then don't absorb it. Why make things difficult for yourself?" Ning Shu was a little helpless. If it weren't for the fact that I had no choice, I wouldn't want to absorb this kind of impure soul power. It's not that I haven't found a way to purify it. Moreover, Ning Shu had seen the impurities in the soul power. If he could really purify them, Ning Shu felt that his strength might take a qualitative leap. Ning Shu rubbed his head. He felt that his head was about to explode. All kinds of strange emotions and feelings were attacking his mind. In short, it was very uncomfortable. It turned out that absorbing this kind of soul was so uncomfortable. Although it strengthened the soul, the after effects were very strong. These emotions and hostility surged into Ning Shu's consciousness like a tide. They roared and wanted to pollute Ning Shu's soul. Ning Shu built a high wall around his consciousness to protect it. Ning Shu closed his eyes as if he had fallen asleep. His body was emitting black energy. Xia Mengtao asked, do you want me to help you absorb some resentment? Ning Shu frowned. No need. I told you not to bother me. Zhu Jun said, don't worry about her. She's a firecracker now. Come here. I'll show you something. Xia Mengtao didn't care anymore. She walked over and looked at the computer. Zhu Jun clicked the mouse. There was an indescribable image and a special groaning sound. Xia Mengtao was speechless. Xia Mengtao was also married. Although she hadn't been with her husband for long, she was still married. Naturally, she knew what this was. Ning Shu was speechless. Damn it! What was Zhu Jun doing? Why was he showing this in front of two women? Was there something wrong with him? Ning Shu was a little annoyed. Can you be quiet and go away? Zhu Jun closed the computer and said to Xia Mengtao, come, go to the side. I'll show you something else. Xia Mengtao quickly shook her head, indicating that she didn't want to go. What kind of things were they showing people? Ning Shu opened his eyes and looked at Zhu Jun. If it wasn't for the skeleton, Ning Shu would have kicked him. He turned into a soul and his soul turned into a skeleton. In the end, he still liked to watch this kind of thing. Lust. Lust was engraved in the bones of every living creature. Zhu Jun said, I'm just curious why people like to watch this kind of thing. In my eyes, all women are pink skeletons. Yes, they're all bones. They're not even as good-looking as me. At least he was golden. How could ordinary skeletons be good-looking? /BK. Chapter 32-25. Ning Shu looked at him silently. Zhu Jun couldn't bear the two women's gazes, so he took the computer and left. By the way, I found clothes for you. You can try them on. Zhu Jun had to receive guests in the future. It was not good to be a skeleton all the time. It was better to wear clothes and look like a human. Picked it up from the garbage? Ning Shu said angrily, no, I bought it. Zhu Jun still wanted to say something, but Ning Shu had a headache. He said directly, don't talk to me. I'm so annoyed. Zhu Jun took the computer back to the world of samsara, so as not to be disliked here. Xia Mengtao sat motionless and didn't speak. She looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu tried hard to keep his consciousness from being contaminated by these dirty things. He could even resist the power of senior uncle. Couldn't he resist this kind of power? Wasn't it scientific? Was this power stronger than the power that had been erased before? Ning Shu had been holding back his anger. He was very irritable, as if a volcano was about to erupt, but the crater was blocked by a stone. It was very uncomfortable to hold it in. Ning Shu didn't know if the souls that had absorbed the wandering souls were like him, but Ning Shu felt particularly uncomfortable. Maybe it was because he had been absorbing pure soul power, and he usually held an umbrella for fear that his soul would be contaminated. Maybe it was because he had no antibodies and had not been exposed to dirty things, so he felt particularly uncomfortable now. Xia Mengtao asked in a low voice, are you uncomfortable? Do you want me to help you absorb some resentment? I can't absorb other things, but I can still absorb resentment. It's a little difficult at the beginning. I know. When Xia Mengtao absorbed the resentment and took it for her own use, she was also powerless. She was anxious and had nowhere to vent it. At that time, there were people who wanted to kill her. Ning Shu certainly knew that it would be fine if he endured it, but his soul had not been so contaminated, so he was particularly uncomfortable. After he got used to it, Ning Shu felt that he shouldn't absorb such dirty soul power. He should take it slowly and let his soul adapt first. Ning Shu waved his hand and said, I know, you don't have to worry about me. They wanted to get used to being contaminated and then take these things for their own use. Understanding was one thing, but doing it was quite difficult. Ning Shu wanted to hold his head and roll on the ground. It was really unbearable. There were countless buzzing sounds in his mind. They were neither human nor beast wailing. Ning Shu said, "Let's return to the world of samsara." In his current state, he couldn't accept any business. Moreover, he had just opened and there wasn't much business. It was safer to go to the world of samsara. After all, the world of samsara was his territory. Xia Mengtao said that she wanted to walk around this world and absorb the qi of resentment. Ning Shu told Xia Mengtao to be careful and returned to the world of samsara. Ning Shu sucked on a piece of fruit to divert his attention. These filthy things were the darkest side of human nature. They were malicious, ruthless, evil, and filthy. They were as filthy as they could get. Ning Shu was like a newborn who had never been exposed to germs. After coming into contact with these things, he had a fever, nausea, and vomited. However, he got used to it after a long time. However, it was really unbearable. All kinds of negative things attacked Ning Shu's mind and wanted to contaminate it. Ning Shu stopped them and wanted to compress these things together. Like an earthworm, he stored them in his teeth. When he bit someone, he would directly inject poison into the person's body. It was very heavy. The body would be contaminated and then the soul would be contaminated. Like Xia Mengtao, he collected these things and formed a source of power. Even an earthworm could do it. Why couldn't she? Ning Shu tried her best to compress the negative energy, but it was like a spring. Once she compressed it, it would bounce back and forth, over and over again. Ning Shu was mentally exhausted. However, he couldn't let his guard down. If he did, he might be drowned by the negative waves. At that time, he would really become a violent person. A person who couldn't control his own actions at all. He would really be able to do anything. Ning Shu bit the fruit slices and compressed them again and again. Just as he compressed them, they burst again. Even giving birth wasn't this painful. It made people want to give up. What was the point of playing? It was really tiring. However, Ning Shu just complained. He didn't dare to let his guard down at all. He didn't want these things to take advantage of him. She felt that these negative things seemed to have their own consciousness. They were trying their best to contaminate her. She wanted to obtain this power. Secondly, she couldn't find a way to purify her soul power. She could only use this method. If she really succeeded, she wouldn't need to find a way to purify her soul power in the future. Maybe she would look for it, but it wasn't something that she couldn't wait for. She could slowly look for it. Moreover, after the purification, the soul power would become less. After all, the impurities would be removed. Then, there would be less pure things. Ning Shu gritted her teeth and ate a piece of fruit. Soon, she would be able to eat the whole fruit. Her soul would become stronger. Now, as long as she persevered, there would be a vast ocean in front of her. Waves, waves, waves. In the future, when she found wandering souls without consciousness, she could directly swallow them. It would save her the purification process. The impurities would also be used by her. It could be considered a helping hand. In the future, if anyone provoked her, she would flick a drop at them. If they had a physical body, it would be fine. If they were in a soul state, they would be contaminated. Her body had something as smelly as the calamity beast. But the premise of this beautiful future was that she could bear it. Damn, I can't bear it anymore. I can't. This feeling of being surrounded by negative emotions was too bad. Ning Shu really wanted to end her life at any moment. She was especially depressed and dispirited. What was the point of living? She might as well die. Living was really meaningless. There was always a higher mountain. She was always like this. She always worked hard and struggled. What was it for? After climbing a flight of stairs, there were many more. After climbing many more stairs, there were endless stairs. So, what was the point of climbing stairs? She might as well lie down on the stairs. At least it was more comfortable. Moreover, the past events flashed through Ning Shu's mind again and again. Especially when she was angry, Ning Shu almost couldn't control the anger in her heart. This was the rhythm of being contaminated. Ning Shu's eyes were red. She looked like she had gone mad. Her body exploded with a thick black aura, enveloping her entire body. It was impossible to see her appearance clearly. Ning Shu also knew that her current situation was very dangerous, but she couldn't control it at all. /BK Chapter 32-26 I can't control myself. Moreover, Ning Shu wanted to devour souls like crazy. He was not hungry at all. Thinking that there were so many souls in the world of reincarnation, Ning Shu wanted to devour all the souls in the world of reincarnation. Ning Shu resisted the urge. He knew that if he devoured souls now, the situation would be even worse for him. He would not starve to death. However, the feeling of hunger was very scary. Ning Shu felt like he was going to starve to death. He couldn't help but want to eat the souls that passed by him. Go, all of you go. You're swaying in front of me like pork knuckles. Are you deliberately making me feel uncomfortable? This was a battle with herself. No one could help her. She could only rely on herself to get through it. Ning Shu simply shut off her consciousness and fell asleep, leaving her thoughts in a state of confusion. If he wanted to pollute her, he could dream on. Ning Shu's body was emitting black smoke. It was as if he was on fire, a black flame. Ning Shu closed his consciousness. Those negative emotions could no longer attack Ning Shu's mind. However, his soul was like an inflated balloon. It would deflate and burst. Ning Shu endured it and then fell asleep. After some time, Ning Shu was woken up by someone. He heard Zhu Jun's voice. Damn, Pippi Shu, you've become black. You're so black. Ning Shu looked at his body. It was indeed very black. Because his body was emitting black smoke, it covered his body. Even his facial features could not be seen clearly. Ning Shu was speechless. Did I absorb too much? If it was too much, it would have the opposite effect. He did not manage to control this thing. Instead, he became like this. Zhu Jun said. Probably. I've never seen anyone as black as you. Ning Shuchang heaved a sigh of relief and told herself that she had to be steady. If she slacked off a little at this time, negative emotions would allow these pervasive filthy things to take the opportunity to enter. Ning Shu smiled. I'm not unhappy now. I'm very happy now. Happy, happy. Zhu Jun said. Xia Mengtao came. She said that her soul has floated to the shop. There's business coming. Ning Shu replied, no, I can't do it now. If she went to the world under such circumstances, she would probably be discovered by the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao would directly destroy her. If it was something as disgusting as excrement, why not get rid of it? Ning Shu was about the same as Calamity. The only difference was that Calamity didn't have consciousness, but she did. Ning Shu did his best to compress these filthy things. If he wanted to use them for himself, then he had to conquer them. If they couldn't conquer it, they would be assimilated by these impurities and become the same thing. Zhu Jun said, then I'll have Xia Mengtao turn down the business. As he spoke, he looked up and down at Ning Shu. You're like this, sigh. Ning Shu, I can't bear to hear bad things right now, so stop sighing in front of me. Even the slightest bit of negative things were like straws on her back. Ning Shu was grinding with these things. For the sake of her beauty, Ning Shu felt that she had to work harder. Otherwise, how could she look good if she kept floating with black energy? How could she raise her head and puff her chest like this? She didn't want to be black. In the future, when she smiled, she would only have 2 rows of big white teeth. That would be too scary. It was rare for her to become beautiful. She couldn't give up like this. If she gave up and took a step forward, she would fall off a cliff. Who knew how many people would laugh at her and gloat over her misfortune? She had left the organization to live a better life. In the end, when others talked about her, they would treat her as a joke and click their tongue. After leaving the organization, she didn't have pure soul power, so she degenerated and absorbed impure soul power, becoming neither human nor ghost. Did she think that she would have a good ending after leaving the organization? No matter how long it took, Ning Shu could endure it. After all, she had time to endure it. One day, she would be able to suppress these filthy 7 emotions and 6 desires and turn them into her own strength. However, apart from being black, Ning Shu was also very smelly now. All the souls that had exposed themselves would take a detour, as if they had seen an evil beast, afraid that they would be contaminated. Ning Shu smelled the smell on her body and could only comfort herself. Now that she couldn't smell the salted fish at all, this was a good thing. Because this smell had been suppressed by the stench. The stench was even more smelly. Ning Shu could only make herself happy now and not let herself fall into a pessimistic mood. Ning Shu found a place to lie down. It seemed that this thing wouldn't end for a while. The organization didn't allow mission enforcers to absorb impure soul power because they knew that such things would happen if they absorbed it. Mission enforcers probably lived in sterile rooms, not allowing mission enforcers to come into contact with germs too much. Ning Shu had left the organization now, so she could do whatever she wanted. Ning Shu used vines to make a hammock, lying on the hammock and swaying. How did it become like this? The sudden voice startled Ning Shu, and she hurriedly climbed up from the hammock. She looked up and saw Tai Shu floating in the air. My God, why could he come to her world? It was as if no one was there. What did he do to her world? Tai Shu had probably never seen Ning Shu like this, like an evil beast. He frowned. Why did it become like this? Ning Shu's attention was all on the world where Tai Shu had found her. This meant that her world wasn't safe at all. Maybe there was more than one mark. Ning Shu grinned, feeling like she had been played. She thought that she had left, that she was happy alone, and that others would come to her world at any moment. Ning Shu sneered and touched her chest. Of all times, he had to come when she was practicing Buddhism and her mood couldn't fluctuate. Once she lost control, she would be in trouble. Ning Shu didn't even bother to ask how he found this place. In short, she was going to clean up this world, including the 9-palace mountain world. She was so dirty now. If she hugged Tai Shu and self-destructed, her dirty things would explode on him. Just thinking about it made her feel good. Ning Shu asked calmly, "What are you looking for me for?" "That's enough, right?" "Is this enough?" Ning Shu laughed, revealing her white teeth. She couldn't bear to look at it. "I'm not messing around. I'm serious. Just say what you want from me. Don't beat around the bush and waste everyone's time." "Oh, don't tell me you want me to go back." Ning Shu suddenly laughed. "I've troubled you to pick me up personally." Tai Shu said expressionlessly, "Then what do you think?" "What do I think? I don't have any thoughts. I just feel so good now that I don't want to go back." Ning Shu lay on the hammock and swayed/BK. Chapter 32-27. Ning Shu now looked like a burnt person. Her eyes hurt just by looking at her. Granduncle asked, "Still not enough?" Ning Shu said, "It's enough. If I do it again, I won't be able to withstand a few more explosions. It's painful and I'll lose my soul power. I'd be stupid to do that. Besides, I won't go back to the organization in my current state." Ning Shu was unscrupulous. This was her world. If Granduncle dared to mess with her here, she could pull the world and her own power to explode together. At this point, Ning Shu had nothing to fear. Grand Uncle said indifferently, "Go back and strip your soul. You'll naturally be purified." Ning Shu shook her head. "I did it on purpose. It's my business whether it's purified or not. It's not convenient for me to see guests in my current state. Please leave." Ning Shu directly drove the guest away. Grand Uncle narrowed his eyes, and the glowing lenses covered his eyes. "Do you really want to die?" Ning Shu shook her head. "I don't want to die. If I wanted to die, why didn't I explode directly? Why would I explode a part of it?" Ning Shu said, "Please leave. Also, don't come to my world casually in the future. This is my boudoir, my territory. Have you asked for my permission to step into my place at will? It's not that I'm going to run back because you came to find me." Then what she had done before was a complete joke. She had to finish the path she had chosen. Grand Uncle glanced at Ning Shu. "Do you think this matter is over?" Ning Shu shrugged. "So, what's the difference? It's nothing more than leaving the organization and dying one by one." "I don't care." Grand Uncle snorted. "You're going to open a dye house just to give you some color." Ning Shu clicked her tongue. "Wrong. It's not you who gave me the color. It's me who gave myself the color. What color did the organization give her? But when there was nothing else, they did give her some color." Ning Shu asked, "It's really unfair for you to lower yourself to this corner. Do you want me to go back and deal with the Star Rocks?" "He left the organization and didn't even finish his own business," Grand Elder said. Ning Shu said calmly, "I've already dealt with the Star Stone that I obtained from the spatial node of the birth plane. As for the volunteer work after that, I'm no longer in the organization." "What's the point of volunteering?" "I'm no longer in the organization, but you want me to do it. Are you going to pay me back for all the compensation I've put down?" The more he spoke, the more meaningless it became. She probably didn't know what was good for her. Ning Shu waved his hand impatiently. "Don't waste each other's time. I'm a furnace now, a furnace that's about to explode. My brain isn't clear, so I don't know what you're talking about." The Grand Elder sneered and disappeared in a flash. As soon as Grand Elder left, Ning Shu called Zhu Jun and the others over. He asked them to investigate the world of reincarnation, including the world of reincarnation. Other than the world of reincarnation, the Nine Palace Mountain also needed to be searched. Zhu Jun asked doubtfully, "Why do you suddenly want to search the world?" "Someone broke in. This place is no longer safe. Of course, we have to find those hidden marks." He didn't believe that Grand Elder could find such things. Zhu Jun nodded and led all the skeletons to find the marks. Ning Shu lay on the hammock and touched his chest. He felt suffocated. Someone broke into the world. He felt uncomfortable as if his private territory was invaded. He was also angry. He always felt that he had left the organization. However, the current situation told Ning Shu that it didn't exist. He just wanted to say, "Fuck. Get out of here. You're making me so excited." She knew that she had to fight these filthy things calmly now. "In the end, you came to provoke me. Can't I cultivate Buddhism properly? You did it on purpose. You deliberately wanted me to explode on the spot and become an evil beast. Humph. You deserve death. After cleaning up the marks, I have to solve the soul problem. As long as I can solve it, I don't have to rely on pure soul power anymore. I can directly absorb ordinary soul power. As for going back to strip the soul, extract the soul power, purify it, and then return the soul power. When this thing was being cut, it was as painful as being cut into pieces. The current situation wasn't any better. The pain that went deep into the bone marrow was better than just controlling his emotions now. It was much easier to control his emotions than to endure being cut into pieces. He wanted to trick her into going back to deal with the star stones again. Ning Shu felt that she had become stronger. It was as if she took over something that others didn't want to do. Ning Shu was really at a loss. Did all the strong people do such things? But even with so many experts, not all of them would do such a thing. What else would they do? If she went back, then what she did before would be in vain. What she lost would be lost. Recently, she had been leisurely. If she wasn't collecting soul power, she was waiting for business. Otherwise, she would absorb ordinary soul power like now. She let herself adapt to the ordinary dirty soul. Moreover, Ning Shu didn't know if other people would enter her world in the future after the grand uncle came. It was like an uninhabited land. Anyone could come to her world to take a look. Ning Shu didn't know how many people had marked her world. The grand uncle had marked her. Did the prefect who came to this world mark her? Damn it! If it wasn't for the grand uncle who came and went like a ghost, Ning Shu wouldn't know that the door to her world was so wide open. This was her world. How could she allow others to come in? This was her tortoise shell. It was her place to stay. How could anyone come in? Calm down, calm down. After the soul problem was solved, she had to search this world properly. She wanted Zhu Jun and the others to search it. Ning Shu scanned her soul. She was marked by Zheng Qing and had her soul power sucked away twice. Zheng Qing had marked her. Maybe other people had also marked her. If that was the case, then the situation was a little scary. She actually didn't know anything about it. If she was also marked, it was very likely because of Zheng Qing. After all, Zheng Qing was the one who had a relationship with her. Ning Shu observed her soul over and over again. She even observed the origin of her soul. If it wasn't the soul power that was marked, then it might be the origin of the soul. The origin of the soul was the foundation of a soul. Most of the souls that floated without consciousness didn't have the origin of the soul. Ning Shu scanned herself like a scanner. She didn't even let go of her sea of consciousness. There were too many places on her body that could be marked. If she really found the mark, it meant that she had been under the organization's surveillance. /BK Chapter 32-28. Ning Shu wasn't in a good mood. No one would be in a good mood after being rudely intruded into their world. That was why they had caused such a ruckus, thinking that they had shed all pretense of cordiality. In the end, it was just wishful thinking on her part. This was a bit awkward. I thought you had the same thoughts as me, but I found out you didn't. Furthermore, she had absorbed impure soul power. It was even more unpleasant to be seen by others when she was in such dire straits. Seeing that she wasn't doing well, these people were happy. Ning Shu felt that if he spent more time, he would definitely be able to turn the impure soul power into his own and extract the toxins from it like an earthworm. He could even turn the toxins for his own use. It was simply awesome. Moreover, the World Cup mark was like a fishbone stuck in his throat. He couldn't swallow it or spit it out. It was too fucking disgusting. He hoped that Zhu Jun and the others could find the mark. However, Ning Shu didn't know if they could find it, or did he have to find it himself. She felt that too many people had entered her world. Lord Taishu, she didn't know if Zheng Qing had entered. This world was like someone else's backyard. They could come and go as they pleased. They didn't take her, the owner, seriously at all. Ah, not good. You didn't call her back. Sang Liang closed the book and asked the Taishu. The Taishu said indifferently, "No, it's fine if she doesn't want to come back. Just find a time to deal with it." Sang Liang said calmly, "She likes to cause trouble every time. It's good to beat her up once and for all." She wasn't the only mission enforcer who had to follow the rules on the surface. If she didn't follow the rules on the surface, it wouldn't be too much to beat her to death. Even if there were benefits, there had to be rules. There were too many mission enforcers who rebelled like her, but in the end, they all obediently returned to the organization. Without the organization, there was no chance for them to become stronger. Since they wanted to become stronger, they had to obediently return to the organization. Since they wanted to leave, they had to see if they had the ability to do so. The organization had never asked mission enforcers to be grateful. It wasn't easy to be grateful. No one could do it perfectly. If one person was satisfied, many people would be dissatisfied. If many people were satisfied, there would be a small number of people who were dissatisfied. What to do? If you were dissatisfied, then so be it. Everyone was just using each other. Now, the mission enforcers could use it. But if they went too far, they had to be punished with a stick. If you don't have the strength, then just hold it in. If you have the strength, then you can negotiate the conditions. Who has the time to listen to you blabber on and on? However, it was clear that there were not many mission enforcers who were on equal footing with the organization. If you don't have the ability, then be honest. Sang Liang said, since she doesn't want to come back, we'll take other measures. The Grand Elder said directly, you can erase the will. Sang Liang's expression was calm as he said, erasing the will and giving birth to a new consciousness requires a lot of time. The Grand Elder raised his eyebrows. Is time a problem? Time was the most worthless thing to them because they had lived for too long. Sang Liang said, time is not a problem, but will the newly born consciousness be better than this consciousness? Perhaps it would be even worse. Furthermore, it will take time. Wasting time will result in greater losses. You can bring her back. If she insists on not returning, you can directly destroy her. Whether or not she can give birth to a new consciousness is actually not important. There was no meat to eat, but it was a pity to throw it away. It was fine to throw it away. There was not much loss. He could only taste it. The Grand Elder just said, do as you see fit. I'm going to deal with the matters outside. The Grand Elder stopped chatting with Sang Liang. He disappeared in a flash and reappeared in the void. There was a huge pool made of star stones. Inside the pool was the calm law of nothingness. A person was lying in the pool. The Grand Elder stood beside the pool and looked at Zhengqing. Although Zhengqing's expression was calm, his frown indicated that he was enduring the pain of being swallowed by the nothingness. He opened his eyes and looked at the Grand Elder. There was deep sarcasm and unruliness in his eyes. Oh, who is this? What a rare guest. Zhengqing endured the pain of being swallowed and looked at the Grand Elder sarcastically. The Grand Elder ignored Zhengqing's sarcasm and stretched out his hand to touch the law of nothingness. He said, it seems that there are too few law of nothingness. You haven't been swallowed yet. In an instant, Zhengqing's face turned ferocious. He gritted his teeth. Grand Elder, if you have the ability, jump down and taste the pain of being swallowed. If you have the ability, don't jump down from the shore. If you have the ability, jump down. The Grand Elder said, I don't have the ability. I just came to see if you were swallowed. If I were you, I would kill myself to avoid such pain. I know you want me to die, but I won't. I will live to disgust you. It's worth it. Why did the law of nothingness give birth to the two of us? Zhengqing sneered. He was the most annoying person in his life. I have nothing to disgust you. Whether you live or die has no effect on me. Zhengqing really hated the Grand Elder's dead appearance. He slapped the law of nothingness with his hand. The arm that Ning Shu had broken with his life had grown back. Grand Elder, if you want to kill me, just kill me. Why are you talking so much nonsense? As long as I'm alive, you'll never be at peace. I'm really annoyed with you. I'm annoyed with your broken toys. Why do you care about those ants and those planes? If they're broken, then they're broken. If they're dead, then they're dead. Why do you care about ants? Now you want to fucking sacrifice me to give those ants a place to live. Are those ants worthy? Despicable things. If you want to kill me, I'll admit it. Why should I sacrifice myself for those ants? I'm really disgusted by your hypocrisy. You fucking think you're a saint. You think you're so great that you want to save the world. Save my ass. The destruction of the plane was caused by those ants. Since they no longer have a place to live, those ants should perish along with the plane. Do they still want to live and wreak havoc on other planes? Since they lived in the planes, they had an impact on the planes. Not to mention that those ordinary creatures were innocent, no one was innocent. These ants are really shameless and don't care about their lives. They're shameless and despicable things. I'll try my best to live until the day the law C disappears. If I'm going to die, we'll all die together. There are so many planes and the law C that will be buried with me. It's really great. This was a kind of belief, a belief that made him persevere. If you want to sacrifice him to help others, you can dream on. If you want him to sacrifice himself to save those things, dream on. It's impossible even in your dreams. Chapter 32-29. Taishu calmly looked at the emotional Jingqing. He brought Mi Jia out and said to Jingqing, "This is your favorite lucky person." Mi Jia appeared in an inexplicable place and saw a man soaking in a pool like the sea. She couldn't help but ask, "What is this place? Why is he soaking in the sea? Can you take me home? Aren't you from my hometown? Why did you take me to such an inexplicable place? I want to go home." Mi Jia didn't expect that she would choose to go with this fellow without hesitation. She thought that he would take her home, but she didn't expect to come to such an inexplicable place. Everything was so strange. Mi Jia was a little scared, especially when these two men made her feel inexplicably frightened. Perhaps the other party's aura was too strong, and the pressure was very low, making her feel uneasy. Mi Jia wanted to be as quiet as a chicken, but in that world, many men held her and loved her, so she was now chattering non-stop. Jingqing glanced at Mi Jia and sneered, making his face look quite distorted. "Taishu, what do you mean? Find me a companion. Let someone accompany me." This was crazy. Mi Jia. So what was going on? Mi Jia couldn't help but ask, "I need an explanation. What are you doing? Why did you take me to this place? Let me tell you, I know Kung Fu. Don't mess with me, or I'll beat you until your teeth fall out." Mi Jia couldn't help but question Taishu. "I trusted you so much and followed you, but you took me to an inexplicable place." The current situation seemed to be that she had to accompany the man in the sea. Why was this man soaking in the sea? It was too strange. These two men were too strange. Jingqing was expressionless. "Are you trying to find a retard to piss me off? You're not going to kill me, but piss me off. Taishu, you're so creative." Mi Jia couldn't help but say with her hands on her hips, "Who are you calling a retard? Apologize, or I'll teach you a lesson." Jingqing ignored her and looked at Taishu. "Do you want me to devour her soul? Grand uncle, do you want me to die or not?" Jingqing could devour the souls of other creatures to strengthen himself. Even if he didn't devour them, he was still very strong. He especially liked to devour souls with all kinds of buffs. In his words, what he absorbed was not souls, but the feeling of buffs. As long as Jingqing absorbed the soul, he would become stronger. He might even be able to break through the restrictions on his body. Then, he would be able to escape the law of nothingness and not be devoured by the law of nothingness. So, he gave it to him to devour so that he could become stronger and live longer. "Grand uncle, you're wrong. I just want you to watch her." The corner of the Grand Elder's mouth curled up as he arranged a barrier not far from Jingqing. This barrier would imprison Mi Jia and at the same time protect Mi Jia from being eaten by Zheng Qing. Zheng Qing was speechless. Bastard. So, you're here to piss me off. Zheng Qing sneered. When did you become so bored? Do you think that just because I have a woman by my side, my mood will fluctuate and I will be quickly swallowed up by the law of nothingness? What a joke. Would my mood fluctuate when I see an ant? Even if there were fluctuations, it would be like eating ants, like an anteater eating ants. Mi Jia was speechless. What are you guys talking about? Why can't I understand at all? However, it was obvious that these two men didn't put Mi Jia in their eyes and didn't ask for her opinion at all. Mi Jia was so angry that she spat fire. Hey, you two chauvinist pigs, did you hear what I said? I don't want to stay here. Also, I need your explanation. I trusted you so much and followed you without asking anything. How did you repay my trust? Don't you feel guilty? The Grand Elder didn't say a word. He directly threw her into the barrier and turned to leave. Mi Jia was so angry that she clenched her fists and waved them at his back. Just as she was about to escape, she bumped into something invisible. With a bang, her forehead turned red. After all, she had stayed in the Xianxia world for a while. Of course, Mi Jia knew that this was a barrier and she was locked up. What the hell is going on here? Mi Jia rubbed her stomach. She felt that she hadn't eaten for a long time, but she didn't feel hungry at all. Sigh, really. She thought that she could go home, but in the end, she was locked up in this place. Accompanying a man who liked to take baths. Mi Jia was a little bored and turned to look at Zheng Qing. This man had long hair and was submerged in the water up to his chest. His face was cold and sarcastic. He frowned tightly and looked a little painful. Mi Jia asked, "Who are you? Why are you lying in the water? What's your relationship with the man with glasses? Why do you want me here?" Zheng Qing turned to look at her and said coldly, "Shut up." Mi Jia said, "There are only two of us here. Who are you being so cold to? Let's talk." Mi Jia was very confused now. There was no one else here, so she could only ask this man. He looked good, but his personality was too bad. In that place, those men were good to her even if they were overbearing. There were also some who were gentle. Even if they were cold, they would eventually become as gentle as ice. Zheng Qing smiled evilly. "Woman, your appearance as a confidant is really disgusting. Do you know that you are already dead? You are now a spirit, a ghost. Do you think that I will have a special love for a female ghost? Love? What the hell was that?" It was something that weaklings would do to keep each other warm. It was something that would only make things more conspicuous. When they were lonely and wanted someone by their side, love came into being. Because of love, they got close to each other. Because of physical desire, two bodies hugged each other because of desire. Your pretentious appearance makes me so disgusted that I don't want to eat you. Mi Jia was dumbfounded. She had never seen such a bad person. How did he survive until now with such a poisonous mouth? But now Mi Jia was shocked by another thing. "I'm dead." Dead? Mi Jia only then noticed that she was wearing a woman's shirt and jeans. It was a completely modern outfit. It was not the thin and sexy clothes of the ancient times. She touched her face and could not help but cover her face with her hands. How could it be? How could I be dead? Why didn't she feel anything? How did she die? Mi Jia's looks were above average, but compared to the Mi Jia, who was so beautiful that she could cause the downfall of a city, she was nothing. Chapter 32:30. Mi Jia liked that body very much because it was beautiful enough. But now that it had become her original appearance, Mi Jia felt despair. What was her appearance? A lot of Mi Jia's self-confidence came from her devastatingly beautiful appearance. Now that she had peeled off that layer of skin, Mi Jia's self-confidence immediately vanished. Mi Jia was dumbfounded. Not only did the man in glasses not bring her home, he even killed her. She didn't know how she was killed. Zheng Qing said viciously, "Not only did she kill you, she also strengthened your soul." "How is it? Isn't it exciting? Isn't it a surprise?" Mi Jia was really desperate. She burst into tears. She trusted him so much. He looked like a steady and reliable mountain. She felt that no danger would happen if she followed him. He had the aura of a strong person. But she didn't expect that man to kill her. Kill her? How could this be? She trusted him so much. Mi Jia felt betrayed and sad. Now she was trapped here, mocked by another man. Zheng Qing looked at an ant crying sadly and found it interesting. Perhaps it was too boring to be immersed in the law of nothingness. Day after day, there was no end. If there was an end, it would be when his life ended. Mi Jia cried sadly, but the man next to her didn't comfort her. He just looked at her. Mi Jia felt wronged. She had never seen such an ungentlemanly man. She had lived long enough to see such a man. Such a man really made her teeth itch. But now she didn't have a flower-like face or a graceful figure. Facing Zheng Qing now, Mi Jia didn't know why she didn't have any confidence. Her appearance that she was proud of as her trump card was taken away. It was like all of Mi Jia's confidence was taken away. How could you? How could you do this? Mi Jia complained. Are you a man or not? You do this, you do that, are you still a man? Zheng Qing tilted his head and thought. You women all like to talk like this. So what if I'm a man? So what if I'm a woman? Mi Jia was speechless. Gentlemanly? Zheng Qing said, you mean I have to sympathize with the weak and care for the weak? Why? Why? Who do you think you are? Wah. Mi Jia's heart ached when she heard Zheng Qing's words. She had always been taken care of by this man, so she couldn't bear to be treated so coldly. Zheng Qing felt that this little ant's crying was really interesting. What was the use of crying? Zheng Qing pursed his lips. The Grand Elder was deliberately disgusting him by putting a big fat piece of meat next to him. He wanted to see how long she could cry for. However, this woman's luck was really great. Sometimes, some people would have inexplicable luck. They might not have done anything to save the world in their previous life. They might have been little ants, but they suddenly had luck. Sometimes, it was not given by the heavenly Tao. Then, where did such luck come from? There were billions of planes, and many strange things happened every day. Zheng Qing moved his neck, and it made cracking sounds. He wanted to swallow her, but crying like this affected his appetite too much. But he couldn't use the law of nothingness now, and she was protected by a barrier. It wouldn't be easy for him to devour this woman. His current strength could only be used to resist the law of nothingness's devouring. He didn't have any additional strength to break through the restrictions in his body. If the restrictions in his body were broken, he would be free. Zheng Qing felt that the Grand Elder wasn't just putting a soul here to annoy him. He must have other purposes. The Grand Elder didn't look like such a boring person. Zheng Qing tilted his head and looked at the woman crying, wondering when she would stop crying. How long could she cry for? How could there be so many tears? What was the use of crying? Zheng Qing was disgusted by the Grand Elder's actions, and so was Ning Shu. This was because Zhu Jun and the others had actually found quite a few imprints and brought them to Ning Shu. Ning Shu looked at these marks. He didn't know if they belonged to the same person or different people. Anyway, no matter who they belonged to, she directly destroyed them with violence. Ning Shu said to Zhu Jun, keep looking. I feel that there are many marks in this world. The organization probably wouldn't let her go so easily. Some things weren't so simple to end. The only useful thing about her was this immortal body. Even if her consciousness dissipated, a new consciousness could be born in this body. If the organization really wanted to cultivate a new one, then they would have to erase her will. Because she wasn't an obedient person. Zhu Jun asked Ning Shu, "I've wanted to ask you for a long time. Did something happen?" He could feel that Pippi Shu's mood was very strange. Ning Shu also knew her current mood. She probably didn't dare to believe that she was free, but in the end, she realized that she really didn't have freedom. It was as if he had expected this. The organization wouldn't let it go so easily. If she left so easily, would more mission enforcers leave the organization in the future? Ning Shu felt that he had to speed up the process and quickly deal with the filth in her soul. He had to turn these things into his own. The organization was only able to deal with mission enforcers with pure soul power. The method of purifying soul power wouldn't be made public. If she wanted to absorb pure soul power, she would have to stay in the organization. If she could absorb impure soul power and turn this filth into her own power, then the organization's pure soul power wouldn't be attractive to her. She wouldn't pretend to be obedient to the organization because of pure soul power. "I don't want what you have, and it's useless to me. Why should I care about you?" Therefore, Ning Shu realized that whether he left the organization now or in the future, if he wanted to become stronger, he had to solve the problem of soul power. Otherwise, he would always be controlled by others. Because the other party had something he needed, he would have to compromise. There were days of eternal life. Could it be that the days of eternal life had to be continuously compromised? Ning Shu didn't regret absorbing soul power at all. So what if he absorbed soul power like this? If he couldn't solve it now, would he never solve it? Anyway, he had time. Ning Shu felt that he could stabilize his mood now. Even if there were negative things, he wouldn't lose control. He would let these things corrupt his mind. Right now, the most important thing was to ensure the safety of this world. Why would someone come over at the drop of a hat? Ning Shu said, "Actually, it's not a big deal. As long as we get through this period, everything will be fine. Don't worry. Continue looking for the imprint. When you find it, just smash it." Chapter 32-31. Such a violent destruction of the imprint would at least hurt the other party's consciousness for a moment. Although it would only hurt for a moment, Ning Shu felt very comfortable. She was telling you that the thing that marked your world had been found and destroyed by her. "I'm just telling you clearly, don't think about my world." It felt like an outsider had installed a surveillance device in her house, monitoring her world at all times. It would be fine if she was being monitored outside, but why was she being monitored in this world? What the hell was this? If she didn't find it and destroy the imprint, would she have to return it to these people? Zhu Jun said, "If you have something to say, just say it. Is it fun to keep it to yourself?" Of course it's not fun. It's just that it's too long. I can't even make it short. It was a bit complicated. When Zhu Jun heard that it was going to be a long story, he didn't want to listen to it anymore. He immediately brought the skeletons to find the imprint. Ning Shu made these skeletons invisible and said to Zhu Jun, "You guys should also go to the 9-Palace Mountain and take a look. Look carefully at every world. Perhaps every world had been marked. I can't go to the 9-Palace Mountain in my current state." Her body was emitting black gas. The heavenly axiom of this world probably wouldn't let her in. Moreover, Ning Shu also felt that it was a critical moment. They were evenly matched. If she didn't back down, then the impurities would be compressed by Ning Shu for his own use. Ning Shu tried his best not to think about the things that made him angry, or the things that made him suspicious. There were too many people behind this matter. Zhu Jun nodded and told Ning Shu to be careful. Ning Shu's current burnt state looked very dangerous. If he couldn't control himself, he would probably be crippled. This was a risky move. If she won, she wouldn't have to worry about anything. But if she lost, she would become a monster from head to toe. Just like the Calamity Beast. Ning Shu smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't die. I still have to bring you guys around the world. Our goal is the Sea of Stars. There are plenty of places waiting for us to go." In order to wander around, Ning Shu would not let himself die and become a mindless monster. Zhu Jun instructed, "Then be careful. Do you want to call Taozi back to stay by your side? If you can't hold it in any longer, let her absorb some resentment." Ning Shu said, "No, I can do it. The earthworms could do it, and so could Xia Mengtao. Why couldn't she?" Perseverance was victory. She just wanted to use negative thoughts to attack her heart. She just had to endure it. She wants to be a Buddhist fairy now. "It's okay, it doesn't matter. I'm fine." Ning Shu compressed these filthy things again and again. Every time he compressed them, the rebounding force would be stronger. However, Ning Shu had been persevering. Dripping water could penetrate a stone. He could endure it even if he had to endure it for a long time. If someone came to look for trouble, he would directly use his dirty body to hug the other party and self-destruct. Dirt would splatter everywhere, and it would feel great. Ning Shu was like a boulder. He allowed the tide to hit him. He would definitely win. Ning Shu used his mental strength to compress this thing and store the filthy things in his dantian. There was no way to cultivate peerless martial arts with the power of the soul. If she could absorb such things now, she could cultivate even in her soul state. In her soul state, in addition to using the power of laws, there were also some power of rules. In fact, there was not much power that she could use. If she could cultivate now, her strength would take a qualitative leap. Ning Shu compressed the filthy things in his dantian. They were as black as viscous oil in his dantian. At first glance, it looked very ominous. It was in a liquid state now. If it was compressed again, it might become solid. As Ning Shu continued to compress it, the black smoke on her body became less and less. Gradually, her face and the original state of her soul were revealed. However, at this time, the filthy things were fighting with all their might. They surged more and more violently to attack Ning Shu's heart, causing Ning Shu to have thoughts of destroying the world. He killed those annoying people and destroyed everything. There was a voice constantly tempting him. "Do you want to try it? Do you want to experience the joy of destruction?" Destruction was addictive. It made people intoxicated and unable to extricate themselves. Thinking about the things that others worked hard to build and then destroyed in an instant, wouldn't it feel good? All kinds of negative emotions attacked Ning Shu. Ning Shu gritted his teeth and remained unmoved. Some things could be indulged, but some things would destroy oneself. The reason why he indulged was to make himself comfortable. If indulging would turn him into a monster, then why should he indulge? Ning Shu continued to compress. Although it kept rebounding, the filthy things had just been compressed into his dantian a second ago. There was no more black smoke in his soul. However, in the next second, it immediately rebounded. His soul was once again filled with black smoke. This cycle repeated. Ning Shu was normal for a while and turned into charcoal for a while. The color kept changing. However, this was a good sign for Ning Shu. Because she was compressing again and again, she was getting more and more familiar with it. It was also getting easier and easier. Soon, she would succeed. Ning Shu was very happy. He was getting more and more motivated. This was something to be happy about. There were wandering souls in the world of reincarnation. There were also wandering souls that didn't know how to enter the world of reincarnation. Once he found these wandering souls, he could directly devour them. He could directly skip the purification process. Moreover, he had one more method. It couldn't be any better. Zhu Jun and the others searched the world of Nine Palace Mountain carefully. When they returned, they said to Ning Shu, "I didn't find any markings in the world of living beings. They are probably in the world of reincarnation." Ning Shu asked, "Then, did you see the world of the ninth level?" The ninth level is also a world of reincarnation. However, it is a deformed world of reincarnation. Zhu Jun shook his head and said, "It is not a world of reincarnation. It is a barren world." Ning Shu. If it was not a world of reincarnation, how could it be? He remembered that there was a rebirth pool. Zhu Jun said, "It is indeed not a world of reincarnation. There are no flowers or rebirth pool." Ning Shu was a little confused. Could it be that the world realized that it was deformed and decided to change? Now that it had become a barren world, it was slowly evolving into a world of living beings. Ning Shu. Is this possible? This was also possible. However, it was good that it changed. It was a deformed reincarnation era. One could only leave but not enter. A world was wasted just like that. If it slowly evolved into a world of living beings, it might evolve into a world of living beings. It was better than being empty. Chapter 32-32. He remembered that there were some wandering souls in the deformed world of samsara, as well as some souls that were put there by His Excellency. Now that the rebirth pool was gone, all the souls should have been reborn. Even if they were not reborn, they were probably being used by the world to evolve. Ning Shu could not interfere with the evolution of the world. As for how it would evolve, it was up to the world itself. Zhu Jun said, "Instead of looking for the mark everywhere, why don't you check if you are marked? Is it easier to find the world than to find you? Can't you just find yourself?" Ning Shu said, "I have checked my soul over and over again. I should not be marked. If it is a mark that I can't find, I should not be able to detect it in my current situation." Ning Shu also checked these skeletons. What if the mark was planted on these skeletons? He probably knew that even if she left the organization, she would not throw these skeletons away. Zhu Jun asked, "What are you going to do next?" Ning Shu said, "I don't have any plans. First, I will solve the problem of the soul and then find someone to talk to." Some things were bottled up in her heart. She had to clarify them. Zhu Jun did not say anything. He left with a large group of skeletons. Without looking back, he waved at Ning Shu and said, "I will find more wandering souls for you." Zhu Jun knew that Ning Shu was in trouble. Ning Shu's life was also related to their life and death and where they would go. After they were created, they did not know what the future would be like. Ning Shu continued to compress the filthy things, compressing them into her dantian. After countless bounces, Ning Shu finally managed to compress these things firmly in his dantian. His soul also recovered its freshness. Ning Shu finally let out a long breath. It was really not easy. This was not a fight where you beat me up and I beat you up. Instead, it was a long period of mental depression, shrouded in all kinds of negative things. It made him feel painful, dejected, desperate, and lonely. Although there was a group of skeletons, this kind of thing depended on Ning Shu alone. If he couldn't make it, he could only become a monster without any intelligence. Fortunately, he managed to endure it. Even if he did, Ning Shu felt mentally and physically exhausted. He felt as if his entire body had been hollowed out. Ning Shu lay down, motionless. In this situation, she needed to stabilize herself. She couldn't rashly absorb more soul force. Once the situation stabilized, he could absorb as much as he wanted. He didn't need to absorb the pure soul energy, and he could still make himself stronger. Although this thing might not really corrode, to some experts, if they were really touched by it, they could just cut off their arm and dig out the contaminated area. But the advantage was that it was disgusting. Moreover, the weaker ones would be corroded directly. It was a good way to play dirty. It was very troublesome to be contaminated. One had to think twice before provoking her. Ning Shu was probably a person who was covered in poison. One touch and he would be poisoned. In the past, he wasn't well liked, and now, he would probably be even less well liked in the future. Ning Shu felt that this was quite good. Don't let people provoke her for no reason. Ning Shu took out the god-beating whip. She wouldn't give it to you. She wouldn't give it to you. Let's see what you can do. So what if I set it up? I'll make sure you can't get the god-beating whip. Did you think that setting up a trap wasn't tiring? Of course, it was tiring. This included many people. Setting up a trap was a method. Breaking through 10,000 tricks was also a method. The more they wanted the god-beating whip, the more Ning Shu wouldn't give it to them. The more she felt that the god-beating whip was a good thing. I won't give it to you. Now, she had lost 40% of the kidney-strengthening fruits in the orchard. If she left the organization, they wouldn't give it to her. Even if she went back, they wouldn't give it to her. So what was the point of going back? Even if she was chased around by the organization, she was willing. It was his choice to be killed. Ning Shu realized one thing, and that was that others didn't listen to her at all. It was as if everything she said was a joke. If you didn't say anything, it meant that you agreed. Alright, you didn't have any objections. You said it, but others didn't take it seriously at all. Why are you still standing there? What's the point? This was because she was too weak. Because she was weak, she didn't need to have any objections. She didn't have the right to speak. Now, she didn't want the right to speak. She didn't want to squeeze in front of them. She didn't expect to have any right to speak. She didn't want it. Ning Shu exhaled. She stood up and jumped to make sure that the filth in her dantian wouldn't dissipate again. Then, she compressed it again. The filth was now in the form of water. She had to compress it into a solid state so that it wouldn't bounce back so easily. Returning to her original appearance, Ning Shu touched her face. It was better to appear in front of others now. She wouldn't appear in front of others with a helpless look. She wasn't begging for sympathy or pity. What was the point of looking so pitiful? Ning Shu jumped to Water City. She was no longer the city lord of Water City because the laws had collapsed. As for the city lord medal, Ning Shu could just leave it in the consultation room when the time came. Ever since she became the city lord, Ning Shu hadn't received many taxes. On the contrary, she was always in trouble. Ning Shu walked into the restaurant and said to the waiter, "I'm looking for Shu Bai. Please inform Shu Bai that I'm Ning Shu and I'm looking for her." Ning Shu didn't order any dishes. It didn't matter if her appetite was satisfied or not. Moreover, she didn't have any merit points to pay now. She was here to ask some questions. Ning Shu sat in the hall and waited. After waiting for a while, Shu Bai didn't come down. Instead, the waiter came down and said to Ning Shu, "Sir, the boss is waiting for you in the private room upstairs. Go upstairs and turn left. It's the last private room." Ning Shu thanked him and went upstairs. When he pushed open the door of the private room, Shu Bai was sitting on a chair. When she saw Ning Shu, she smiled. As usual, she poured a cup of tea for Ning Shu and said, "What would the city lord like to eat?" Ning Shu said faintly, "You don't have to call me city lord. I'm no longer the city lord." He didn't even have the nomological imprint. How could he be the city lord? When he came back here again, he felt that things had changed. Shu Bai nodded her head and said, "Then what would you like to eat? I'll treat you. Serve me all the delicious dishes." After all, he might not come back in the future. Shu Bai nodded her head and said, "Okay." The two of them were silent. When all the dishes were served, Shu Bai took the lead and said, "Try some. This is the restaurant's newest dish." Ning Shu picked up his chopsticks and said, "I want to try it and see if it tastes good. I want to see if it will improve your restaurant's business." Ning Shu tasted every dish and nodded his head. "It tastes good." Shu Bai fanned herself with her round fan. She held the fan tightly and smiled. "Thank you, City Lord, for your praise. With your words, I believe that my restaurant's business will improve." Chapter 32-33. Shu Bai was a little nervous, but she pretended to be calm on the surface. On the phone, Ning Shu smiled faintly. "It'll get better. After all, the restaurant is all you have. If the restaurant isn't good, you won't have anything to settle down in." Shu Bai's fan paused as she said, "Yes, a weak person like me is just like a lowly creature. I only have the instinct to seek benefits and avoid harm. Because I'm too weak, I can't even care about righteousness and morality." Because she was too weak, she couldn't do evil or become a kind person. Because she would die, she was like an animal. She was afraid and used her instincts to avoid danger. When she was escaping, she wouldn't even think about whether it was right or not. Because she couldn't bear the danger, her actions would only be looked down upon by others. Because she was poor and weak, she couldn't become a kind person. Poverty gave birth to evil intentions and wealth gave birth to kindness. If one wanted to be a kind person, they only needed to give something insignificant to become a kind person. They had the right to choose what kind of person they wanted to be. But what about when they were poor and weak? When they couldn't even protect themselves, why would they think about protecting others? Shu Bai smiled, appearing even more gentle and moving. Shu Bai had always been magnanimous and moving. Even at this time, she was still smiling. Ning Shu also smiled. Her smile was much more ethereal and carried a sense of aloofness. "What does it have to do with me? Do you think I have to sympathize with you? I thought you came to me for protection because you thought highly of my strength. I didn't expect you to turn around and sell out the person who protected you." Shu Bai's smile disappeared. Her expression was bitter, but she didn't regret it. "I chose to give up the opportunity to become strong back then. This is what I should bear. Because I was weak, I was threatened, so I had to compromise. I understand. Regardless of whether I was coerced or took the initiative, some things are done. I have nothing to quibble about." Ning Shu said indifferently, "What benefits did they promise you?" "They didn't promise me anything, but they threatened me. They could have directly asked me to get out of the city. I might have been able to refuse the temptation, but direct threats are often simpler and more violent. Temptation proved that you had value. Threats that came with orders were an even more tyrannical and barbaric method. They used extreme power to directly destroy you." Ning Shu laughed. "I think not only are you weak, but your brain is also a little abnormal. Shu Bai, you've been doing business for so long. Haven't you learned how to take both sides? You only needed to say one thing to me, to mention it in advance, and this matter would be perfect. But you didn't say if they would protect you after I left." Shu Bai had mentioned that if she still insisted on looking for Zhang Jiasen, would this matter have anything to do with Shu Bai? It didn't matter. No matter how things turned out, Shu Bai wouldn't be blamed. Ning Shu stood up. "Keep these dishes for yourself. Although this is a world where the strong prey on the weak, you don't have any morals. We won't meet again in the future. You're talking about the survival instincts of low-level animals. I don't think your desire to live is that strong. I hope the new City Lord of Water City can protect you." Ning Shu walked out of the restaurant and looked back at the restaurant's signboard. Even without the law of prophecy, Ning Shu could predict that this restaurant wouldn't be open for long. Something had happened to the person behind Shu Bai. Now, something had happened to her. Who would be Shu Bai's protector in the future? However, Ning Shu didn't think that Shu Bai would be able to find a suitable protector for what she had done. This was the sorrow of the weak. They couldn't be themselves and had to entrust their hopes to others. However, it was more practical to rely on others. This was Shu Bai's choice. Even if Shu Bai regretted it, she wouldn't have the chance to start over. She would always be like this, looking for someone to protect her. However, who would really protect her all the time? Like Shu Bai's choice at a critical moment, others might also make the same choice and give up on her. Sure enough, one could only see a person's true colors after something happened. In the past, Ning Shu quite liked to bicker with Shu Bai. Now, it seemed that how much of that bickering was actually true and how much was fake. There was also a disadvantage of a soul body. She couldn't even enjoy the pleasures of intimacy. Once she broke away from the control of her physical desires, the boundaries between men and women weren't so clear. Men wouldn't always think about satisfying their physiological needs, and women wouldn't be any weaker than men. Everyone was a soul body, so what was the difference? If they had a body, there would still be physiological differences. However, after becoming a soul body, it depended on whose soul was stronger. This was a place where both men and women had to work hard. Shu Bai, he didn't even have to do anything. Shu Bai's life wasn't easy. She had to rely on others to protect her. The restaurant wasn't a money tree. Friendship. Ning Shu felt that she had some feelings for Shu Bai. But what about it? She probably felt that he couldn't protect her and that she couldn't beat those people. Therefore, she chose the other side. There wasn't anything to be angry about. It was just that there was one less person to talk to. Shu Bai was the same as Zhang Jiasen. She acted as a go-between in this matter. Shu Bai wouldn't think that this matter was over and that the people of that faction would forget about it. Perhaps they would treat it as a fart, but they might despise it in their hearts. People were so strange. On one hand, they would shout that a wise man submits to circumstances. On the other hand, they would praise those who were loyal. There were roughly two sets of standards. People could use these two sets of standards to find an excuse for their actions. Ning Shu arrived at the consultation room. He didn't go in. Instead, he threw the City Lord medal on the table in the room and turned to leave. Sang Liang lifted the curtain and saw the City Lord medal on the table. He called out to Ning Shu. "Why are you leaving? Sit down and have a chat." Ning Shu turned around and said, "I don't dare to go in. I don't have money." From the moment she stepped in, her identity had already been cancelled. As for the merit points in her account, there was also the reward for picking up the fragments and handling the star stones. All the things she had in the past were gone. It was impossible to part on good terms. Even if it was possible, she had to give up a lot of things. Sang Liang's expression was indifferent. He sat down and looked at Ning Shu. "Come in and sit down. Tell me everything clearly. Otherwise, if you can't explain it clearly, many things will be meaningless." Ning Shu asked, "Do I need to pay for this conversation?" Sang Liang said, "It's free." Ning Shu lifted her skirt and walked into the consultation room. She sat down and asked calmly, "What do you want to talk to me about?" Sang Liang asked, "Leaving the organization just like that?" Ning Shu asked back, "Otherwise?" If she didn't leave the organization like that, she would have to hold a farewell ceremony and be reluctant to leave. /BK Chapter 32-34. She was afraid that the black muzzle of a gun would be pointed at her again. Although she wouldn't die, it would hurt her body and her soul. The pain of the soul exceeded the pain of the body. Ning Shu really wanted to swing the whip and let those people have a taste of the pain of the god-beating whip. Sang Liang asked, "Is it worth it?" Ning Shu shrugged and said, "What's done is done. Don't think about whether it's worth it or not." She had to bear with regret. She had already experienced the worst. It did not matter if it was worth it or not. Regardless of whether it was worth it or not, she was the one who wanted to do it. Whether the consequences were good or bad, she had to bear them. Ning Shu and Sang Liang's conversation was peaceful. It did not seem like there was any class conflict. Sang Liang said, "I don't want anything in the organization. I don't need the power of the soul or the merit. Since it's a mutually beneficial matter, let's make use of each other. You're like a child trying to get attention." Ning Shu tilted her head. "If I say I don't want anything, I'm still trying to get attention. I'll think of a way to get the power of the soul. As for the merit, it's the same as not having it." "You don't want the fruit?" Ning Shu smiled. She had enough stock now to fill her stomach. In the end, the fruit would be useless. She would probably have a lot left. She wanted everything and wanted to grab onto everything. In the end, she could not grab onto anything. Sang Liang nodded thoughtfully. "I think I understand." Ning Shu leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. She raised her chin slightly and said, "What do you understand? Tell me." Sang Liang said, "I feel wronged." "Wronged?" "A little. After all, things are unfair." "I don't feel wronged. After all, I'm the one causing trouble. In fact, taking a step back would be a good thing." However, she did not want to retreat. What if she retreated to a corner and had nowhere to retreat? Offense was the best defense. She had to catch her opponent off guard. "You want to save face, but I don't. I'm also a little fairy who loves her face. It's exciting to test the edge of danger." Sang Liang said, "Then what do you want?" Ning Shu shook her head. "I have no desire for the organization. I don't dare to ask for anything." "No desires?" Sang Liang raised his eyebrows. "Is it because the chips aren't up to your standards, or do you really have no desires?" Ning Shu counted with his fingers and said, "First, I don't have a nomological imprint. Since my nomological imprint has shattered, I haven't received any taxes and still have to worry about the city. Secondly, I don't need to purify your soul power. I'm not interested in how you purify your soul power. I'm currently adapting to devouring soul power. Thirdly, and most importantly, why am I being mocked and ridiculed for working so hard to deal with the star stones? Is dealing with star rocks like cleaning toilets? Otherwise, why are there so many people looking down on us? Since he wasn't respected by others, why did he have to suffer so much?" Sang Liang pondered for a while and said, "Probably some people are used to being lazy. When they see someone diligent, they call him a fool." Ning Shu clapped his hands. "So that's how it is. Why are you all spoiling those people? Why are you all exploiting me like this? This is something that I have never been able to figure out. Please help me clear up my confusion." Sang Liang said. "Probably because you're cuter." Ning Shu smiled. "Thank you, but that's not the reason why you want me to work hard." Ning Shu stretched. "Do you have anything else to say? If not, I'm leaving." Ning Shu stood up, but he was actually on guard to prevent Sang Liang from dragging him back to dry the candle. Furthermore, it was the kind of candle that would last for tens of thousands of years. She hadn't even lived for tens of thousands of years. Sang Liang said calmly, "Sit down. Why are you leaving when we haven't reached an agreement?" Ning Shu said, "I don't have anything to talk about. I think I understand what you're doing now. Do you want me to return to the organization?" Ning Shu shook his head. "But I don't want to go back at all. Otherwise, I'll leave with my tail between my legs after making such a mess and losing so much. I'll lose face." Now that she could directly absorb soul power to strengthen herself, why would she need to ask for pure soul power from the organization? Furthermore, she didn't need it. The organization was a channel that connected mission givers, and then the organization would take a cut. Everyone was mutually beneficial, and there was no need to talk about who would give who. Just like a company, they would improve based on performance and get more resources based on their ability. Ning Shu wanted to leave now. He didn't want to fight for this little bit of resources and wander around alone. The world was so big, and he wanted to see it. The organization would probably say that the world was so big that he couldn't see it without money. Sang Liang raised his eyebrows. You directly absorbed impure soul power. Ning Shu nodded. Speaking of which, I don't want to believe it myself. I directly swallowed impure soul power and tortured myself for a long time. Sang Liang shamelessly asked, how do you feel now? Nothing, it's like this. Ning Shu directly condensed a drop of black stuff. When this thing came out, the surrounding smell became a little strange. In fact, this thing was considered trash. Ning Shu seemed to have drunk impure water, and now the impurities in the water were precipitated and used for his own use. Sang Liang looked at the black drop of water and nodded. Not bad. Actually, this is quite good, but not many people have the courage to do so. They rely too much on pure soul power. It was good to rely on it. Relying on it meant relying on the organization. In fact, mission enforcers were like harvesting leeks, wave after wave. Some died for various reasons, and some became stronger. Therefore, the organization didn't lack mission enforcers. It depended on whether this mission enforcer was worth keeping. If not, then there was no need to keep. Ning Shu, yes, so I have no desire for the organization. My dream is not to work and spend money. If he could spend money, why would he go to work? Was the world not beautiful enough? She calculated that when she went to every world, she would look for wandering souls. Maybe she could get more by doing missions. If she opened a studio, it would be enough for her to eat. It was so beautiful. The premise was that she could really leave the organization. Sang Liang's pale and slender fingers tapped on the book cover. Her nails were round and very carefully trimmed. A pair of beautiful hands. Just say it. What do you want? Ning Shu, it depends on what the organization can give me. You don't even give me a price. How do you want me to know the value and whether it's worth it or not? Sang Liang, if you say what you want, the organization will consider giving you an answer. Ning Shu shook his head. N. I said that I have no desire for the organization. I'm listening to you now because I want to know something, /BK. Chapter 32-35. Knowing that she had paid such a high price, what price would the organization pay to get her back? In fact, Ning Shu also knew that she was of little value. Her only use was to deal with the star stones. However, many people were unwilling to deal with the star stones. But if it was too much, the organization would not agree. She thought too highly of herself. Sang Liang said, that depends on what you want. Freedom, sorry, there is no such word in the organization. You have to be controlled here. Even if you leave the organization, you still have no freedom. Do you understand what I'm saying? Ning Shu, are you threatening me? Ning Shu said, then what are we talking about? Talk about nothing. Wasting time, might as well open a studio. The studio had not opened yet. Sang Liang said, since you can absorb the soul power by yourself, then when you do missions in the future, you don't need to purify the souls of the clients. They all belong to you. Ning Shu did not say anything. She just spread her hands and did not express any opinion. Even if there were only one or two wandering souls in a world or plane, the soul power from doing a mission was still a lot. Some things could be compared. This seemed to give her a big pie, but for Ning Shu, it was not tempting at all. After all, she could get the soul power through other channels. The organization strictly controlled the soul power. In fact, there were many ways to get the soul power outside the organization. And she had the world of reincarnation. There were also wandering souls that had lost their minds in the world of reincarnation. They could also be absorbed. Right now, Ning Shu didn't care if her soul was clean or not. She didn't care if it was dirty or not. Ning Shu said, "Go on." Sang Liang said calmly, "Is the whole soul power of the client not enough for you?" Ning Shu shook her head. "I don't care if it's enough or not. I just don't care about this." The soul power was no longer under her control. Since it was a negotiation, then she should take out something that really tempted her. Take out something that would make her willing to stay in the organization. But she did not have it. And she lost 3 law imprints this time. Ning Shu did not expect the organization to return them to her. Anyway, the law imprints had collapsed. Sang Liang asked, "Is the world tree alright?" Ning Shu nodded. "It's pretty good." She had been in poor condition recently, which caused the world tree to be listless and not grow much. Sang Liang said, "The world tree can't form a world without something special." Ning Shu spread his hands. "I'm not organizing it anymore anyway. I don't care if the world tree forms a world or not. Even if it does, it'll only be a place for the creatures from the broken plains." In the past, Ning Shu heard that there was a world that wouldn't be easily erased, so he tried his best to create a world. Now, it seemed that there was a world that the organization felt could contain living beings from a shattered plane, and it would really increase their own weight. Only when something was valuable could it be measured. When his soul grew into a small sapling with a tinge of green, it purified the air and led a happy life. As for whether or not the world tree could grow into a world, it was up to fate whether or not it could grow into a world. In order to let his world tree leaf form a world, he stayed in the organization. After the world was formed, he moved the creatures of the broken plane into his own world. Ning Shu was speechless. What was he after? Would the foreign creatures speed up the decline of the world? Was it for merit? Now, Ning Shu had started to raise skeletons. If there was merit, he would eat it. If there wasn't merit, he would eat the fruit. When the fruit was gone, the skeleton's strength was about the same. It didn't matter. He was fine. When he didn't have any more requests or demands from you, it was time for him to really give up on you. The silver-haired man narrowed his eyes. "You have no desires. It seems that life and death are up to fate." Ning Shu said, "Life and death can still be salvaged. If I can live, why should I die? I'm not doing this for death. I'm living happily." Ning Shu smiled. "If there's nothing else, I'm leaving." The silver-haired man said, "So you're rejecting the organization?" Ning Shu nodded. "I'm not rejecting it. I actually hope to coexist peacefully. Let's be good neighbors and have a harmonious relationship." Neighbors. He was a neighbor, not a member of the organization. The silver-haired man shook his head. "You want to be free and stay outside of the organization, but you also want to benefit from the organization. There's no such thing in the world. You can either die or stay in the organization. The choice is yours. I'm talking to you now because I hope to resolve this peacefully and not with an intense dispute. I don't like fighting." Ning Shu asked, "Is there no third way?" The silver-haired man said calmly, "There is. You can resist stubbornly and get caught. You won't die for the time being, but you'll be punished." Ning Shu curled his lips. "That's quite overbearing. Can't mission enforcers leave the organization? Has no one ever left the organization?" "Yes, but it's back again. Some people are greedy. They want the organization's protection and freedom." Ning Shu said, "I don't want the organization's protection. The organization wants me to drift with the waves. They don't care about my life or death. I only choose one thing. I only want freedom. I don't want the organization's protection. There was no such thing as having the best of both worlds. Ning Shu hoped that they wouldn't care about her and would care about her death. The silver-haired man said, "You can't. You're more destructive than others. Even if you leave the organization, you'll still be monitored. Instead, because you're no longer in the organization, you'll be monitored even more strictly." Ning Shu spread his hands. "Don't worry. I won't do things like murder, arson, or destroy the world. This kind of thing is time-consuming and laborious. Plus, it's useless to me. Destroying the world." He had nothing better to do. Ning Shu had never felt that she had to take revenge on the world because of her deep hatred. Tiring. She now wanted to be a Buddhist beauty, a carefree little fairy, and slowly strengthen herself. During this time, she didn't have to worry about the number of missions she had. She was called to deal with star stones. When she found something good, people came over like cats that smelled blood. If they had the ability, they could go find it themselves. What was the point of snatching what others found? They would scheme and make her hand over the things. If she couldn't even protect her own things, why did she need to be strong? What was the use of being strong? The silver-haired man said, "So, your world of faith has been resolved. How long can the law of nothingness last?" Ning Shu said, "I've collected a lot of star stones. If one day I really can't hold on anymore, I'll directly find the law of nothingness where Jingqing is and throw it in there. It'll fuse with the other law of nothingness. The law of nothingness has become bigger. Maybe it can even speed up the devouring of Jingqing and give birth to a new law C sooner, saving this dying law C/BK. Chapter 32-36. If the ultimate martial arts couldn't hold up in the end, Ning Shu would send the ultimate martial arts to a suitable place. Building a world was actually for the organization to install a world on ordinary creatures. She was no longer in the organization, so it didn't matter if there was a world or not. Ning Shu felt that everyone in the organization was talented. For example, the silver-haired man gave her something that didn't hurt her, but gave her the feeling that they were already accommodating her. If she still didn't agree, then she didn't know what was good for her and had no conscience. If someone who was usually bad to others suddenly became a little better, it would be flattering. She also had to comfort herself that he was such a person. He was already very good, very good. She shouldn't ask too much of him. Bottom lines were meant to be stepped on. The organization was stepping on Ning Shu's bottom line. When you asked for money, you talked about feelings. Look at how much the organization gave you. Without the organization, you wouldn't be where you are today. You should be grateful. Now, the organization was talking about feelings. And they were attacking her with something called morality. If leaving the organization meant death, then so be it. Ning Shu said happily, "You guys think so highly of me. I'm really quite important. Does my existence make you so uncomfortable?" If that was the case, then she had become an existence that made others uncomfortable. It was actually something worth celebrating. "Thank you. This is an absolute compliment to my strength. Of course, this is all my own hard work." Ning Shu felt that she wouldn't destroy the world, and she wouldn't harass the organization for no reason. She didn't want to become enemies with the organization. But why did she become a dangerous person in the eyes of others? She couldn't figure it out. She really couldn't figure it out. The silver-haired man said indifferently, "You have the law of nothingness. If you're not satisfied, can you just pour it out?" Ning Shu said, "Don't worry, I don't have the ability to pour it out yet. Even if I could, I would pour it out in a reasonable place." Why would she use the law of nothingness on people who had no enmity with her, or even on planes? Why couldn't he understand? As long as they didn't provoke her, she was very obedient and charming. She had always been a talker, but she wouldn't do anything if she could. Now, he was lazy. In the past, he would just attack whenever there was a disagreement. But now, she would also cry and fight. If he left the organization and became enemies with the organization, there was nothing he could do about it. So be it. Ning Shu held the peerless martial art in his hand and said, although this thing is very dangerous, if you don't let me, I will directly fall on your head. The silver-haired man said calmly, what you're doing now will only make the organization's assessment of your danger level rise. At that time, you won't be returning to the organization. You'll just disappear. Ning Shu said, oh, then what do you want me to do? I'll send you all to die, okay? The silver-haired man said, sit down. Let's talk. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. What was there to talk about? All they talked about was the same thing. What was there to talk about? Giving him something ambiguous and without any concrete operations, he wanted him to go back. Ning Shu could clearly feel the proliferation of the organization. She probably wasn't treated seriously enough by the organization, but they still wanted her to go back. It didn't make any difference whether she was there or not. So why did they want her to go back? Ning Shu felt his face burning as if he had been slapped. Well, they were all people who wanted to save face. She didn't need to save face. Ning Shu became calmer. What a waste of time. Ning Shu opened the black hole and stepped directly into it. He turned back and said to the silver-haired man, let's not talk about it. We can't talk about it at all. If the organization really wants to kill me, I will be ready for the arrival of the organization. The silver-haired man didn't say anything. He watched Ning Shu leave. Then he closed the book, lifted the curtain and went into the inner room. After returning to the world of reincarnation, Ning Shu personally checked the world of reincarnation again to see if he had missed any marks. Talks with the organization had failed again. The organization wouldn't let her go. She probably had the law of nothingness and was a dangerous person. After checking the world of reincarnation, Ning Shu went to the Nine Palace Mountain again. When he scanned the second level, he found the earthworm. The earthworm looked a little different. He must have changed his diet. Now he was as thin as a leech and as thin as a wire. His whole body was black. If it wasn't for the familiar wave, Ning Shu almost couldn't recognize him. Ning Shu used a branch to poke the earthworm. Changed your diet? What did you eat? You lost so much weight. The earthworm cursed Ning Shu in his heart. You poked me the moment you saw me. Ning Shu said, Yi Lin is dead. He said you pooped, so I knew you were still alive. Earthworm was a person who wouldn't fight with his life. Basically, he wouldn't die. The earthworm said, he pooped. Anyway, it has nothing to do with me. I didn't kill him. Ning Shu said, I didn't say you killed him. Did you have a fight with him? Okay, but I couldn't beat him. He threw me over. I couldn't beat him, so I ran away, the earthworm said. Ning Shu said. It's not good for me to comment on your actions. However, with a strong enemy in front of him, Yi Lin probably thought of sacrificing the earthworm to fight for a chance of survival. Moreover, he probably didn't expect the earthworm to actually be intelligent. He just drilled into the ground and ran away. The earthworm asked, have you seen Liren? After seeing so many people, I still think Liren is the cutest. Ning Shu was speechless. How was Liren cute? His own child was probably the cutest. The earthworm felt this way. Liren was not cute at all. Ning Shu asked, he's still in this world. You changed your diet. Is there still poison? Of course there's poison. Besides, I choose poisonous things to eat. The purified ones are not bad. By the way, where's Liren? Is Liren still alive? The earthworm sighed like an old father whose son didn't return home. Ning Shu said, I don't know. I don't know how he is now. I guess he's still alive. Just like Liren, he was probably a scourge. Besides, Liren had a lot of opinions about her. He would definitely want to live and take revenge on her. After all, she had stabbed Liren and killed Liren. Liren held a grudge. He definitely wouldn't let her poop before taking revenge. Ning Shu said, "How are you doing in this world?" "So. It's neither good nor bad. It would be better if I were with Liren." Now that Yi Lin wasn't around, the earthworm was thinking about Liren. Sure enough, it found that Liren was the best. What kind of illusion was it that made the earthworm think that Liren was the best person in the world? How many filters did he have on his head? Ning Shu didn't let the earthworm follow her. Chapter 32-37. As long as the Nine-Palace Mountain was in the world of reincarnation, she would bring the world of reincarnation with her wherever she went. It didn't matter whether she was by his side or not. Moreover, she could stay in the world of reincarnation if she had nothing to do. Creatures like earthworms couldn't live in the world of reincarnation. Their bodies would rot and eventually turn into souls. Ning Shu wandered around this world. The small workshops that produced soul fluid had almost disappeared. This world wouldn't produce soul fluid anymore. After wandering around a few worlds, he didn't find any markings. Ning Shu raised his hand and said to the skeletons, "Let's go. Let's go to the depths of the void. The further we go, the better. Retreat strategically first." Zhu Jun asked, "What about your shop?" Ning Shu said, "I don't care about the shop. Anyway, it's just like that. I'll come back after wandering around." Zhu Jun asked, "Then how do we get there?" Ning Shu laughed. "Anywhere is fine, as long as we leave this place." Since she wouldn't die, she could just wander around. If she avoided the organization now, she wouldn't bump into them since she hadn't cultivated into a copper pea yet. The skeletons didn't have any objections. After all, they lived in the world of reincarnation. It didn't matter where they went. Ning Shu jumped out of the world of reincarnation. He was surrounded by the pitch-black void. Ning Shu walked in the dark void. There was really nothing in the void. There was no life, no business. There was only dust floating quietly. Ning Shu didn't know where to go. He just went with the flow and went wherever he should go. As for whether he could come back or not, it didn't matter at all. Maybe he could find a new place to live peacefully. Ning Shu felt that the organization wouldn't spend so much effort to find him. She was of little value and wasn't worth the organization spending so much effort on. As for whether the organization would be angry or not, who cares? Ning Shu walked step by step in the void. He didn't have a direction or a goal. He just went wherever he wanted to go. Occasionally, he would encounter some souls in the void. These souls didn't enter the world of reincarnation. They just floated in the void. That's right, he directly absorbed them into the world of reincarnation. Some souls without consciousness could be directly absorbed. However, the moment Ning Shu placed the souls inside, the surrounding space rippled slightly. "Who stole my souls?" The voice was very low and angry. It was a low male voice. Ning Shu was speechless. Could it be that these souls had a master? Ning Shu spoke to the void of space, "Who is it? Hurry up and come out. Hand over your soul, or I'll eat you." Why do so many people like to eat souls? Yes, she liked it too. A fox-like animal jumped out, its fluffy tail wagging. "You stole my soul." "What a contrast," said a man in a low voice. Ning Shu asked, "What are you?" The fox licked its claws and looked at Ning Shu with a pair of black eyes. "Despicable two-legged monster, give me back my food." "You stole it." Ning Shu said, "I didn't know this was your soul." "Now you know. Hurry up and return it to me, or I'll eat you." Ning Shu said, "Where do you live? Where did these souls come from? What does it have to do with you? Hurry up and return it to me, or I'll eat you." The fox's fur stood up. Why is a piece of food so noisy? Ning Shu waved the fox's claws. With a strong gust of wind, it directly pierced through Ning Shu's soul. Ning Shu didn't show any weakness. He took out the god-beating whip and whipped it at the fox. The tail of the whip swept the fox's fur, and the fox's fur stood up. Despicable low-level creature, how dare you attack me? The fox stood up. Because its fur stood up, the fox became fatter. What low-level creature? I'm not a low-level creature. He met a fox here. It seemed to be a race that ate souls. It's a low-level creature, food to be eaten. Human souls as food? What kind of world is this? It's interesting. Ning Shu picked up the fox and said to it, let's take a look at your world. The fox was grabbed by the back of its neck by Ning Shu. It struggled hard. Let go of me. If you don't want to die, let go of me. Do you believe that I won't eat you? Let's go take a look. The fox had no choice. It created a whirlpool-like thing and brought Ning Shu to a strange world. There were all kinds of animals running around in this place. There were also people, but the people's necks were tied with chains and walked by all kinds of animals. There were also some animals that killed people at any time and then absorbed the soul power. As humans, these humans didn't have the arrogance of the leaders of living creatures. Did you see that? Two-legged monsters are food here. How dare you steal my food? From the looks of it, the people in this place were at the lower end of the food chain. These animals ate human souls. Humans were at the lower end of the food chain. There were also some animals that kept humans in captivity, like how humans kept pigs. It felt like the food chain in this place was completely reversed. Interesting. In the past, it was humans who ate all kinds of animals. Now, it was animals who ate humans and ate human souls. Not only did they eat souls, there were also people who ate hearts, livers, spleens, lungs and kidneys. Some animals liked to eat human livers. In order to get a fat liver, the animals that kept humans in captivity would try their best to stuff things into the human's mouth, making fatty livers that tasted great. Give me back my food. The fox exploded. Ning Shu said, it's already in my world. It won't be easy to find it. Ning Shu asked, where is this place? Ning Shu could feel that this was definitely not a plane connected to the Sea of Law. Because she was walking in the opposite direction from the plane. She couldn't just go around in a circle and end up here. So, this was not the plane where the Sea of Law was born. In other words, other than the Sea of Law, there were other worlds. How far did she walk? Where is this place, heh? The fox sneered, as a food, you should have the awareness of being a food. Ning Shu shook the fox's fur and said, where is this place? What place? It's a place where we live. Is there a problem? The fox struggled, let go of me, or I'll eat you. The fox opened its mouth and revealed its sharp teeth. It bit Ning Shu's other hand. It directly bit a hole in Ning Shu's hand, and even bit 2 of his fingers. Quite a temper. Ning Shu held the fox and swung it in a circle. The fox was dizzy from being swung, and foam came out of its mouth. It was so disgusted that it vomited. Chapter 32-38. Seeing these life forms, Ning Shu felt as if he had not left the plane. Could it be that other than the Sea of Law, other seas of law had been born? The Sea of Law was not unique. Ning Shu thought as he shook the fox. He felt that she should have left the plane very far away. If there was really such a place next to him, he should have discovered it long ago. Don't shake it, don't shake it. The fox said weakly. Ning Shu grabbed the fox's neck and made it look at him. Do you also have a Sea of Law here? If there really was a Sea of Law, why didn't Granduncle drain it? Wouldn't it be good if he did? Maybe he couldn't drain it at all. I don't know what you're talking about. Let go of me. The fox struggled. It was very unhappy with Ning Shu's insubordination. Its fur all over its body fluffed up. Probably because it was caught by a food, it felt quite embarrassed. Even its fur turned red. The fox waved its claws, and the sharp claws created strong winds that pierced through Ning Shu's soul. Why aren't you dead yet? Die quickly. The fox waved its claws desperately. Ning Shu said, "You can't kill me." It was like poking someone with a toothpick. There was no lethality. What kind of food are you? Are you mutated? The fox stuck out its tongue and licked its beard. I don't know how a mutated soul tastes like. I want to taste it. Ning Shu chuckled and was about to break the fox's neck. The fox immediately cried out, let go, I won't eat you." Ning Shu said, "I'm asking you a question, so you'd better answer honestly. Otherwise, I'll break your little neck. You like to eat human souls, and I also like to devour the souls of mission creatures, especially foxes. Foxes are cunning and charming. I wonder if I'll increase my charm if I eat you." Pervert. Ning Shu asked, "Do you know that there are billions of worlds next door?" What the hell? I've never heard of it. I just stole a few souls and wanted to run away, but you saw me. I'm just hungry and want to eat something. In the end, he was a thief, and what he stole was souls. Humans were at the bottom of the food chain. Their bodies and souls were devoured by all kinds of creatures. As for the creatures that devoured souls, their souls either went to the world of samsara or were devoured by other creatures. Ning Shu asked, "Then how many worlds do you have here? Is there a sea of law?" The fox struggled. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand what you're saying. Let me go. Otherwise, if I scream and attract my people, you won't be able to escape. I advise you not to take things too hard." Ning Shu did not let go of the fox. Instead, he turned invisible and carried the fox around. This world was relatively primitive. There were animals everywhere. These animals would kill humans and suck their beautiful souls. There were also some animals that kept humans in captivity. Ning Shu asked, "How did you get into the void? How could he break through the bit wall if he didn't have some ability?" "I don't know what you're talking about. This is the ability of the Fox clan. It can spread very far. It stole souls and would always go to a place where there was no one to enjoy. I've already told you. Now you should let me go." The fox's eyes rolled around. Ning Shu replied with an "Oh. Wait for a while. Once I leave, I will naturally let you go. Maybe there were many worlds here, and there was a sea of law. 3,000 big worlds and billions of small worlds. Maybe the sea of law that was born was just a speck of dust in the big world. Maybe it was a crop in a large piece of land. And those monster rats were like locusts, eating the crops." Ning Shu was stunned by the scene he imagined. If that was really the case, then how small was he? So small that he couldn't see it. The world was unimaginably vast. "Then when are you leaving?" The fox sneered. "You still want to leave? Keep dreaming. As long as it was a soul, it would be devoured. There would always be a powerful creature that would devour you." He could only blame himself for not being strong enough. Ning Shu pondered. As expected, the sea of stars was very big. And these animals were also gifted. In that world, humans were the leader of all creatures. They could treat other creatures as they wished and eat them. But here, the position was completely reversed. Humans had become the most miserable existence. But Ning Shu wouldn't think of joining forces with the humans here to do something big. After all, the rules of this world were like that. Maybe after a few thousand years, humans would become serfs and become the top of the food chain. No one could say for sure. But now, humans were similar to pigs. If you told a pig to rise up and contribute to the entire human race, it would be a miracle if a pig could understand. It was probably because they were at the bottom of the food chain that their intelligence was relatively low. Ning Shu carried the fox and walked around the world. He was a little surprised. Some animals would command humans to build houses. Ning Shu felt that these animals were courting death. Although humans were not intelligent, they were the most creative creatures. Although they didn't have sharp claws, they knew how to use tools. If they let humans build houses now, perhaps not long later, humans would rule this world. There was no choice. Anyway, it was either the east wind suppressing the west wind or the west wind suppressing the east wind. Ning Shu didn't find any treasures in this world, so he let the fox go and left. He continued to wander. After that, Ning Shu didn't find any other worlds. Perhaps that world was more magical. But Ning Shu bumped into a wave of army. And it was a face-to-face encounter. It was really awkward to look at each other like this. Ning Shu already recognized that this was the monster army that he had fought before. It seemed that they were going somewhere again. It was pitch black in front of them. She was alone. It was so scary. Ning Shu wanted to greet them and say that he was passing by. He had dealt with these soul-eating armies before. What could he do if he couldn't win? Ning Shu pretended to be strolling and slipped away from the locust-like monster army. However, there was a snap of fingers. Then, the army surrounded Ning Shu. Ning Shu said with a smile, "I'm just passing by. You can pretend that you didn't see me." Could it be that these monsters didn't have a fixed position, but walked around to eat and rob? These monsters that evolved by eating were very tall and strong. Their defensive abilities were also very strong. Their bodies were glowing with a metallic luster. There were so many of them. Even if there were 2,000 skeletons, they wouldn't be a match for them. Ning Shu decisively raised his hand and said, "I surrender. I want to see your king. I know your king." Chapter 32-39. Brother Emperor, are you still there? Have you been swallowed by the rats? These monsters can eat a lot of things, even the corpses of their own kind, to achieve their goal of evolution. Although Li Wen was only a weak human, at least he had some relationship with the king of this race. With another snap of his fingers, the monsters immediately shrank the encirclement and surrounded the trembling Ning Shu. Ning Shu was speechless. If you have something to say, say it. Don't keep snapping your fingers. Do you think this is cool? It's not cool at all. These monsters wanted to catch Ning Shu, but Ning Shu did not struggle. If they really wanted to kill him, they would not be driving like this. Ning Shu was caught on the middle ship. Although it was a ship, the ship was completely dragged by the monsters. Ning Shu stood on the deck and snapped his fingers again. Ning Shu was a little speechless. Who knows what you're going to say when you snap your fingers? However, Ning Shu still walked into the ship. The cabin was very big, and the decorations inside were quite exquisite. There were many people inside, and they were all naked. They did not have any physical characteristics, and it was hard to tell if they were male or female. In the middle was the king of this race. He still looked the same. He had not changed or aged, and he was wearing clothes. Beside him sat Li Wen. Li Wen's aura was much stronger than before. His aura was also deeper. It was obvious that Li Wen was much stronger now. He's not dead, and he's much stronger. This is a good thing. The king looked at Ning Shu. You chased me here. Ning Shu said, I didn't. I was just passing by. Whether you believe it or not, I believe it. Haven't you always been in the Sea of Laws? Why are you here alone? Li Wen asked. Ning Shu sighed and said, No, don't mention it. Something happened in the middle. It's teary to talk about it. Brother Emperor, how have you been? Did anyone bully you? It was not easy for Li Wen, who was from an alien race, to live here. These monsters could even devour planes. How could they take a liking to a bug living in a plane? Only the living beings in the plane could be considered true Earth-class living beings. If even planes were food, then humans would at most be little bugs in the cabbage. Calling them little bugs was an overstatement. Li Wen said gently, "Fortunately, I'm doing well." "You don't look very well." Ning Shu smiled gently and awkwardly. "I have a bad temper and bad manners. That's why we ended up like this." Li Wen asked, "Do you have any plans next?" Ning Shu said, "No, I'm just looking around." Li Wen looked at Wang beside him. Little Mouse looked unhappy. "My temple is small. It can't accommodate such a bad-tempered Buddha." Li Wen didn't look at the little mouse anymore. Instead, she looked at Ning Shu. "Why can't you go home? I'll help you explain." Ning Shu spread his hands and said, "Seriously speaking, it's not really a big deal. Are you going back?" "I'll go with you." Ning Shu was a little surprised. "Are you sure you want to go with me? Aren't you afraid that someone will catch you?" In any case, Li Wen was on the mouse's side. It would be best if she was caught. The little silver mink sneered. "It would be best if they caught me. Then I can go over there and eat planes legitimately. I'm just afraid that they won't catch me." Ning Shu, "Okay, you have more people. You think you're so good." Li Wen wanted to send him back. Ning Shu asked curiously, "Why are you sending me back? Are you going to put in a good word for me?" "It's useless." Strictly speaking, they were on opposite sides. One wanted to guard, while the other wanted to eat. They would definitely fight. Li Wen nodded. "Since you don't have anywhere to go, then go back. It's not good to be floating in the void alone." All right, you're so annoying. You just want me to make her stay, right? All right, you stay. Why do you have to beat around the bush for such a trivial matter?" The little silver mink's face was full of impatience, but at least he had made Ning Shu stay. Li Wen smiled. "If I were to say it directly, you would be even more unhappy. Where can a little girl like her go?" Li Wen waved at Ning Shu. "Sister, come here. I'll take a look at you." Ning Shu walked over. Li Wen looked Ning Shu up and down. "You've changed a lot. You're not the same as before." "Ning Shu, I've changed my sex a few times." "No, I mean I've transformed a few times. I'm not the same as before." "Where are you going next?" Ning Shu asked curiously. The little silver mink glanced at Ning Shu. "Just stay here. Don't run away if you don't want to be eaten. Also, don't call me Brother Emperor. It's disgusting. We're not siblings. Even if we're not siblings, we're close. We used to be siblings. That's an ironclad fact." The little silver mink gritted his teeth. "Be careful with your words. There are many people on this ship who want to eat you." Ning Shu looked around at the people in the cabin. They were all naked and had no physical characteristics. They looked at Ning Shu with hostility. One of them stood up and said, "King, why do you keep a lowly human here? It's fine if there's one, but why do you keep another?" The little silver mink glanced at his subordinate. "What's the big deal? Keeping her here means we're tolerant. If she doesn't listen, we can just eat her. It's so troublesome." Then, the subordinate looked shocked. "King, you're right. Ning Shu, these people probably had evolved bodies but not brains, or they were the little silver mink's die-hard fans." No matter what the little silver mink said, they looked shocked. Even though the little silver mink was a human and was wearing clothes, Ning Shu couldn't help but imagine him looking like a mouse. He just didn't know if he had any physical characteristics. Ning Shu tried his best not to look at the little mouse's crotch. Instead, he looked at Li Wen. Li Wen was very calm. Clearly, she had experienced a lot. She looked at Ning Shu and smiled. She didn't say anything else. King said to Ning Shu, "Since you're a friend, you can stay on the ship. The deck is your seat. Don't expect a room. Do you know how difficult it is to get on this ship?" Ning Shu nodded. "It's not easy to get on this ship." "Then why are you still standing here? Go to the deck," the little mouse said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu nodded and turned to leave the cabin. He stood on the deck. This race was too big. There were teams everywhere in the endless void. Where were these teams going? Had this race always been wandering? Wherever there was a plane to nibble. Ning Shu stood on the deck and looked at the endless variety of strange-looking insects. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.